Stone that melts without heat. Precision cut without visible tools. Structures aligned with a sky long changed. Across the world, remnants of ancient civilizations stand in quiet defiance of modern understanding. They are not myths, and they are not guesses. They are measurable, documented, and deeply unsettling. How were they made, and why can't we recreate them today? Were skills lost, knowledge erased, or something misunderstood entirely? As we move from sweeping ruins to specific, inexplicable details, one question grows louder. Let's step closer and examine the archaeological mysteries that still refuse to be explained. Beneath the medieval streets of Viterbo, where volcanic stone buildings rise above quiet piazzas, another city exists, one carved into darkness. The Hypogeum of Viterbo is not a single chamber or tunnel, but an extensive underground network etched directly into the soft, tough rock. Stairways descend into shadow, corridors narrow, widen, then vanish into sealed walls. Above ground, life has continued for centuries. Below, time feels suspended. These subterranean spaces are not accidental. Archaeological surveys confirm that many of the tunnels date back to the Etruscan period, well before Roman dominance in central Italy. The Etruscans were skilled engineers, known for their mastery of stonework and underground construction. Similar hypogea, underground complexes, appear across Lazio, often used for tombs, water management, or ritual purposes. In Viterbo, however, the scale and complexity feel different. The tunnels twist in irregular patterns, connecting cellars, wells, and chambers beneath private homes and churches as if the city were built twice, once in sunlight, once in secrecy. Mainstream explanations suggest practical origins. Some tunnels may have served as quarries, providing building material for the growing settlement above. Others appear to be cisterns or drainage systems, carefully angled to collect and redirect water. During the Middle Ages, the hypogeum expanded, reused as storage rooms, escape routes, or places of refuge during sieges. In a region shaped by political conflict, hiding underground was often safer than standing one's ground. Yet certain features resist simple classification. Some passages descend too steeply or lead nowhere. Chambers appear with no clear function, too small to store goods, too large to be mere access points. In places, tool marks are faint or inconsistent, suggesting phases of construction separated by centuries. Who began these spaces, and how many generations modified them without leaving written records? Then there is the silence of documentation. Despite Viterbo's importance as a papal city in the 13th century, detailed references to the full underground network are scarce. Portions were rediscovered accidentally, during renovations, collapsed floors, or utility work. Each discovery reveals that what was known is only a fraction of what exists. How much remains sealed behind unbroken rock? Speculation naturally fills the gaps. Some researchers propose that parts of the hypogeum had ritual significance, perhaps linked to Etruscan beliefs about the underworld. The descent into earth held symbolic meaning, representing transition, rebirth, or communion with chthonic deities. Others suggest later secretive uses, hidden meeting places, forbidden archives, or pathways designed to move unseen beneath the city during times of unrest. More fringe theories drift further still. A few have wondered whether the tunnels follow patterns aligned with ancient energy lines, or whether their construction reflects knowledge now lost. Why do some chambers feel deliberately isolated, cut off rather than abandoned? Are they unfinished, or intentionally sealed? What complicates every explanation is the absence of final answers. The hypogeum is not fully mapped. Modern exploration is limited by safety concerns and private ownership. Each descent uncovers more questions than evidence. The underground resists full exposure, as though it was never meant to be understood all at once. Standing at the threshold of one of these tunnels, the air cool and unmoving, it's difficult to escape the sense that the Hypogeum of Viterbo is unfinished business. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just waiting. Waiting for context, for connection, or perhaps for a future generation to see what earlier ones could not. And until then, the question remains: what purpose required an entire hidden world beneath the city, and why does it still guard its secrets so carefully? Standing at the threshold of one of these tunnels, the air cool and unmoving, it's difficult to escape the sense that the Hypogeum of Viterbo is unfinished business. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just waiting. Waiting for context, for connection, or perhaps for a future generation to see from the tunnels beneath Viterbo. Where stone corridors disappear into shadow, our journey moves farther west, across the Tyrrhenian Sea, to an island shaped by wind, time, and silence. Sardinia rises from the water like a fragment of another age, and carved into its limestone hills, just outside the city of Alghero, lies a place where the living once stood face to face with death, the necropolis of Anghelu Ruju. At first glance, the landscape appears unassuming: low vegetation, pale rock, open sky. But beneath the surface, the earth is hollowed out by intention. Anghelu Ruju is the largest prehistoric necropolis in Sardinia, composed of more than 30 rock-cut tombs known as Domus de Janus, houses of the fairies, as later folklore would name them. These chambers are not monumental in scale, yet they carry a weight that feels unmistakable. Doorways are carved into stone as if meant to be crossed. Walls are smoothed, shaped, and sometimes decorated. This was not simply a place to bury the dead, it was a place to keep them. Archaeological evidence dates the necropolis to the Neolithic period, around 3200 BCE, long before the iconic Nuragic towers that would later define Sardinia. The tombs were used for centuries, possibly millennia, with human remains layered over time. Bodies were placed deliberately, sometimes accompanied by pottery, tools, or personal ornaments. Red ochre stains, symbolic of blood, life, or rebirth, are still visible on certain walls. These were not random burials. They followed a system, a belief structure that modern researchers can only partially reconstruct. Many of the tomb interiors imitate domestic architecture. Ceilings are carved to resemble wooden beams. Door frames echo the entrances of houses above ground. The implication is striking. Death was not seen as an end, but a continuation. The dead did not leave the community. They moved into another version of it, carved beneath the earth. But why go to such lengths? Why invest so much time and precision into spaces that were never meant for the living to inhabit? Mainstream interpretations suggest ancestor worship played a central role. The tombs may have functioned as collective memory chambers, anchoring lineage and identity to the land. In this view, Anghelu Ruju was a spiritual archive, preserving the presence of those who came before. The repeated use of the same tombs reinforces this idea, generation after generation returning to the same stone rooms, reinforcing continuity in a changing world. And yet, certain features raise quieter questions. Some tombs include carved symbols whose meanings remain uncertain: spirals, bull horns, and abstract shapes etched into walls with no written explanation. The bull motif, in particular, appears repeatedly across prehistoric Sardinia. Was it a symbol of strength, fertility, divinity, or something else entirely? The absence of definitive answers leaves space for interpretation, but also for doubt. Then there is the choice of location. Anghelu Ruju is positioned with a commanding view of the surrounding land. From the necropolis, one can see far beyond the immediate settlement area. Was this practical, symbolic, or both? Did the dead watch over the living, or was the site chosen to mark territory, to anchor claims across generations? More speculative theories drift further into uncertainty. Some researchers have noted acoustic properties within certain chambers, where sound behaves unusually, resonating in ways that feel deliberate. Could rituals involving chant or voice have been performed here? Others point to alignments, subtle, imperfect, but persistent, between tomb entrances and solar events. Were these chambers designed to interact with light at specific times of year, or are such patterns coincidental, imposed by modern eyes searching for meaning? As with many prehistoric sites, what complicates every theory is what's missing. There are no texts, no names, no direct explanations. The builders of Anghelu Ruju left only stone and bone, form and repetition. Their knowledge, whatever systems of belief or engineering guided them, did not survive intact. We see the result, but not the reasoning. What remains undeniable is the skill involved. Carving dozens of chambers into solid rock with Neolithic tools required planning, coordination, and time. These were not temporary efforts. They were investments meant to last. And they have, outlasting the cultures that created them by thousands of years. Walking through Anghelu Ruju today, the chambers feel quiet but not empty. The air is still. The stone absorbs sound. It is easy to imagine this place once filled with ceremony, with voices low and deliberate, with gestures whose meanings are now lost. And that loss may be the greatest mystery of all. If these were houses for the dead, what kind of life were they preparing them for? And how much of that understanding vanished, sealed into stone, waiting beneath the Sardinian earth for someone, someday, to truly understand what was built here and why? From the rock-cut chambers of Sardinia, where the dead were given homes beneath the earth, our path now stretches across continents and centuries, toward the high Andes of Peru. Here, stone does not merely shelter memory, it commands it. On a hillside near the village of Sayhuite, far from the monumental cities that usually define Inca achievement, a single carved boulder rests in quiet isolation. It does not rise as a wall or form a doorway. It does not support a structure. Instead, it waits, dense with detail, resistant to interpretation. This is the Sayhuite stone. At first sight, it appears almost organic, like a natural outcrop shaped by erosion. But a closer look reveals precision. Carved across the stone's surface is a complex miniature landscape. Terraces, stairways, channels, basins, and angular forms that resemble buildings or fortifications. More than 200 distinct features have been identified, all sculpted into a single block of andesite weighing several tons. There are no inscriptions, no accompanying structures, just the stone, shaped with intent. The Incas, master builders of the pre-Columbian world, were renowned for their stonework. Their walls fit so tightly that blades cannot slip between the joints. Their cities aligned with mountains, stars, and water. And yet, the Sayhuite stone stands apart from these achievements. It is not functional in any obvious way. It does not carry weight or direct traffic. It represents something. But what? Mainstream archaeological interpretations often point to water. The Incas held water as sacred, a living force that connected the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Many researchers believe the stone may have functioned as a hydraulic model, a three-dimensional map used to study the movement of water through canals, terraces, and basins. When water is poured over the stone, it flows through the carved channels, splitting and rejoining, mimicking rivers and irrigation systems on a reduced scale. In a civilization where agriculture depended on precise water management, such a model would have been invaluable. But this explanation raises further questions. Why carve such an elaborate model into an immovable stone instead of using clay or wood? Why place it here, away from major administrative centers? And why invest so much labor into a single object with no clear signs of repeated practical use? Other scholars suggest the stone may represent a symbolic landscape rather than a technical one, a sacred map of the Inca worldview. The miniature terraces could reflect the agricultural zones of the empire. The stepped forms might symbolize mountains or apus, revered as living spirits. In this interpretation, the Sayhuite stone becomes a cosmogram, a stone embodiment of how the Incas understood the structure of their world, compressed into a form that could be seen, touched, and ritualized. Yet even this does not fully explain its isolation. There are no clear ceremonial platforms nearby, no documented processional routes leading to it. Spanish chroniclers, often meticulous in describing Inca rituals, make no direct mention of the stone. Like so many artifacts encountered by archaeology, it seems to exist between categories, too complex to dismiss, too ambiguous to define. More speculative interpretations emerge when attention turns to scale and detail. Some observers note that the stone appears to depict not just one landscape, but many layered together, microcosms nested within a single surface. Channels intersect in ways that suggest intentional experimentation. Basins vary in depth and shape. Could this have been a teaching tool used to instruct engineers or priests, or perhaps a testing ground where water behavior was observed under controlled conditions? Fringe theories go further still, proposing that the stone encoded lost knowledge, mathematical ratios, geographic data, or even representations of entire regions now altered or destroyed. A few have pointed to similarities between the stone's carvings and known Inca sites, suggesting it may be a compressed map of real places. But such connections remain tentative, difficult to prove, and easy to overextend. What complicates every theory is the absence of context. The Inca civilization relied heavily on oral tradition and knotted records known as quipu, many of which were destroyed following the Spanish conquest. If the Sayhuite stone once had a name, a story, or a specific function, it vanished with the voices that explained it. What remains is form without narrative. Standing before the stone today, one is struck by its silence. Rain gathers in its channels. Light moves slowly across its carved edges. It does not demand attention the way towering ruins do. Instead, it invites patience, observation, restraint. The longer one looks, the more intentional it feels, and the less certain its purpose becomes. Perhaps that uncertainty is the point. Like the underground cities of Europe or the stone tombs of Sardinia, the Sayhuite stone challenges modern assumptions about function and meaning. It suggests that not all creations were meant to be efficient or even understood by those outside their culture. Some were meant to endure, to hold knowledge in reserve, or to mark ideas rather than places. If the Incas carved their understanding of water, land, and cosmos into this stone, what were they trying to preserve? And if this is only a fragment of a larger system now lost, how much of their knowledge remains hidden, not in texts or monuments, but in forms we have yet to learn how to read? From the high Andes, where a single carved stone may have once held an entire worldview, the journey now returns to Europe. Back to a quieter landscape, shaped not by mountains but by time itself. In western France, among rolling fields and low horizons, the land rises gently in places where it should remain flat. These are not natural hills. They are deliberate, they are ancient, and they are older than almost everything around them. This is the Tumulus of Bougon. At first, the site appears understated. A cluster of earthen mounds rests near the Bougon village in the Deux-Sèvres region, softened by grass and sky. No towering walls, no carved facades, no inscriptions to announce their purpose. But beneath these low silhouettes lie some of the oldest monumental structures in Europe, dating back to the Neolithic period, around 4,700 BCE, long before Stonehenge, long before the pyramids of Egypt. Here, the dead were gathered, enclosed, and remembered. The Bougon complex consists of several tumuli, each constructed over generations. Stone chambers were built first, using massive limestone slabs, some weighing several tons. These chambers were then covered with layers of earth and smaller stones, creating the mounds visible today. Archaeological excavations have revealed human remains, tools, pottery, and animal bones, evidence of repeated use rather than a single event. The tumuli were not sealed permanently. They were returned to, reopened, modified. Mainstream archaeology interprets Bougon as a collective burial site, a place of ancestral importance. The dead were not isolated but grouped, suggesting strong communal identity. The effort required to transport and assemble the stone slabs implies organized labor and shared purpose. These were not temporary shelters for the dead. They were enduring monuments intended to last beyond individual lifetimes. Yet even within this framework, questions emerge. The chambers vary in size and design. Some are carefully shaped, with fitted stones forming precise enclosures. Others appear more irregular, almost experimental. Why such variation within the same site? Does it reflect changing beliefs over centuries, or different groups working side by side? The scale of construction itself raises deeper uncertainty. The limestone slabs used at Bougon were sourced from locations several kilometers away. Without metal tools, wheels, or draft animals, Neolithic builders would have had to move these stones using methods that remain only partially understood. Rollers, sledges, manpower. These explanations are plausible but not definitive. No direct evidence of the exact techniques has survived. What knowledge allowed these early communities to plan and execute such feats repeatedly? The alignment of the tumuli introduces another layer of intrigue. Some chambers appear oriented toward specific cardinal directions. Others seem positioned in relation to the surrounding landscape, responding to natural contours or distant horizons. Were these choices symbolic, practical, or cosmological? Did the builders mark solar events, seasonal cycles, or something more abstract, concepts of balance, passage, or return? Unlike later cultures, the people of Bougon left no written language to clarify intent. What we see is structure without explanation, action without recorded meaning. The burials themselves offer clues, but not answers. Some individuals were accompanied by grave goods, others were not. Bones were sometimes arranged deliberately, suggesting rituals of secondary burial, where remains were moved or reorganized long after death. This implies ongoing interaction with the dead, not final separation. More speculative interpretations arise when Bougon is viewed not as an isolated site, but as part of a wider prehistoric network. Similar megalithic structures appear across Atlantic Europe. Dolmens, passage graves, stone circles, built by cultures separated by distance but connected by shared architectural language. Did these communities exchange ideas, beliefs, or technical knowledge over long periods? Or did similar needs independently give rise to similar forms? Some researchers have proposed that sites like Bougon served not only funerary purposes, but also social ones. The construction itself may have been the ritual, a process that brought people together, reinforcing identity through shared labor. In this view, the monument mattered less than the act of building it. But if so, why choose permanence? Why ensure these structures would endure long after their builders were gone? Fringe theories occasionally suggest more abstract functions. A few have wondered whether the tumuli were positioned to interact with natural energies of the land, or whether their chambers were designed to influence sound, light, or sensation during rituals. While such ideas remain unproven, they reflect a broader truth. These spaces were experienced, not merely used. Their enclosed darkness, their weight, their silence, all of it would have shaped perception. Standing within one of the reconstructed chambers today, the outside world feels distant. The stone absorbs sound. The air is cool, heavy. It is not difficult to imagine ceremonies unfolding here. Slow movements, deliberate gestures, moments of stillness shared between the living and the dead. But imagination can only go so far. The evidence stops short of explanation. What endures is intention. The tumulus of Bougon was not accidental. It was planned, repeated, and maintained across generations. Knowledge was passed down, not in words, but in practice. And yet, the reasoning behind that knowledge remains just out of reach. If these mounds were meant to anchor memory, to fix identity into the land itself, have they succeeded too well? Perhaps the builders of Bougon never intended to be understood by distant futures. Perhaps the mystery was not a failure of transmission, but a condition of endurance. And as the mounds continue to rise quietly from the French countryside, one question lingers in their shadow. What understanding of life, death, and continuity was strong enough to move stone, shape earth, and leave behind monuments that still refuse to fully explain themselves? From the sun-drenched plains of western France, where earth and stone were shaped into enduring monuments of memory, our journey returns once again to the rugged landscapes of South America. Here, far from the high Andes and the solitary Sayhuite stone, lies a vast desert valley near the mouth of the Nazca River in southern Peru. Among arid dunes and scattered hills, a city once thrived, not built for permanence in the way European tumuli were, but for ritual, ceremony, and the rhythms of the sacred. This is Cahuachi. At first glance, the site appears deceptively simple. Sand sweeps over low mounds, broken walls, and the remains of adobe platforms. From the air, the complex spreads like a ghostly map, terraces and pyramids forming geometric patterns against the ochre desert. Archaeologists estimate that Cahuachi was a ceremonial center of the Nazca culture, flourishing between roughly 1 CE and 500 CE. Unlike the Nazca lines, which are etched on the ground in massive, abstract forms, Cahuachi's significance emerges in the form of its architecture: low pyramids, plazas, and open courts that suggest gatherings, rituals, and public spectacle. Excavations have revealed a startling complexity beneath its quiet exterior. Adobe platforms were carefully constructed, often with multi-tiered levels and internal chambers. Pottery, figurines, and offerings of precious metals and textiles were deposited throughout, evidence of repeated ceremonial use. Organic remains, maize, cotton, and even camelid bones point to ritual feasts or sacrificial practices. And yet, the sheer scale of the site defies simple understanding. Unlike cities meant for daily habitation, Cahuachi appears sparsely populated, even at its height. Most of its structures show little evidence of permanent domestic life. This was a place meant to gather people, not house them. Mainstream archaeology interprets Cahuachi as a spiritual hub, a center where the living could commune with the supernatural, honor ancestors, and perhaps petition deities for fertility, rainfall, and prosperity. Its plazas may have hosted large gatherings, while the pyramids functioned as ceremonial stages or observatories. The Nazca's obsession with water, so central to life in this arid landscape, may have informed the placement and orientation of these structures. Cahuachi, in this sense, becomes a focal point of control over natural and spiritual resources, a tangible nexus of belief and power. And yet, the more we study Cahuachi, the more its mysteries multiply. Unlike other ceremonial centers, it was never fortified, even though small surrounding communities existed. Why would a site of such significance remain unprotected? Was it the sanctity of the place that offered security? Or was it understood as untouchable in ways we cannot perceive? Some pyramids were carefully aligned with distant mountain peaks or water sources. But these alignments are imperfect. Were they symbolic, practical, or something else entirely? Even the construction itself raises questions. Adobe, though abundant, is fragile. It erodes easily under wind and rain. Yet the builders of Cahuachi created structures that endured centuries. Layers of clay, sand, and stone were combined with precision. Internal chambers, sometimes hidden beneath seemingly simple platforms, suggest intentional complexity. How did the Nazca achieve this level of architectural sophistication without tools or techniques that would later be considered standard? How much knowledge of soil, load-bearing, and material longevity was encoded in practices now lost to time? Then there is the ritual dimension. Many scholars believe Cahuachi functioned as a pilgrimage site, drawing people from across the Nazca region. But why this location, at the edge of a desert, rather than near permanent water sources or urban centers? Ceremonial activity appears highly organized, yet we have no written records to explain the meanings of the offerings, the choreography of processions, or the symbolic language encoded in the structures. Figurines depict hybrid creatures, mythical beings, and abstract symbols, yet their significance is still debated. Were they votive objects, protective talismans, or representations of a cosmology we can only glimpse? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest Cahuachi may have functioned as an experimental or instructional site, where priests or shamans tested rituals, observed outcomes, or trained new initiates. Others have proposed that the arrangement of pyramids and plazas reflects astronomical knowledge, subtle alignments with solstices, stars, or the flow of rivers. But evidence is circumstantial. Could Cahuachi have been a model of the wider Nazca world, a microcosm in which the spiritual, environmental, and social orders converged? What complicates every interpretation is absence, the absence of definitive records, of explicit symbolism, of explanatory inscriptions. The site does not yield its secrets easily. Each excavation uncovers new questions. Why do some platforms remain untouched, seemingly untouched by human hands for centuries? Why are some offerings placed in complex, almost ritualized patterns, while others appear scattered or unfinished? Was Cahuachi a permanent spiritual authority, or a seasonal gathering ground whose significance ebbed and flowed with environmental and cultural cycles? Standing amidst the desert wind today, Cahuachi impresses with both its scale and its silence. The adobe walls rise like echoes of vanished voices. The plazas stretch outward, empty yet suggestive of ceremonies long concluded. One can imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands, moving through these spaces. Dancers, priests, pilgrims, carrying offerings and ritual implements. And yet, as with so many mysteries we have explored, the tangible evidence tells only part of the story. The intent, the beliefs, the precise methods, all are largely lost. Perhaps that is the enduring power of Cahuachi. It was built to endure, yet not to be fully understood. Its very existence challenges assumptions about how prehistoric cultures interacted with their environment, with each other, and with forces beyond comprehension. And as the desert sun casts long shadows across its platforms, one question lingers. What knowledge, what sacred understanding is encoded in these adobe terraces and hidden chambers, waiting quietly, patiently, for someone to discern, centuries after it was first created? From the sun-baked adobe terraces of Cahuachi, where ritual and pilgrimage shaped both landscape and culture, our journey now carries us across the Mediterranean to a cluster of islands steeped in history and legend. Here, on the rugged limestone surfaces of Malta, there is a phenomenon that confounds archaeologists, engineers, and travelers alike. Deep, parallel grooves etched into the rock, stretching for hundreds of meters across hills, valleys, and cliffs. These are the Malta cart ruts. At first glance, they may appear simple, almost mundane. Two narrow channels cut side by side into the stone, worn smooth by time and weather. Yet, closer inspection reveals a puzzle that has perplexed observers for centuries. The ruts vary in width, depth, and spacing. In some places, they run straight and level. In others, they twist, converge, or disappear altogether. They traverse slopes too steep for carts as we understand them, plunge into rock-hard plateaus, and sometimes vanish into the sea itself. The more one studies them, the less they resemble conventional tracks, and the more they hint at an unknown logic, a lost knowledge now vanished. Archaeologists generally date the ruts to the Bronze Age or earlier, suggesting they were in use long before Malta became a center of Mediterranean trade. Some theories propose that they were channels for sledges carrying heavy stone blocks, perhaps to construct the island's megalithic temples, some of the oldest freestanding stone structures in the world. From Tarxian to Menasdra, the correlation between temple sites and nearby ruts is tantalizing. Could these grooves have served as practical infrastructure, a prehistoric conveyor system? Yet the ruts refuse to conform to practical explanation alone. Many run down steep inclines, curving sharply without apparent regard for stability. Some traverse soft rock that would erode too quickly to support repeated passage. In several instances, they intersect and diverge in patterns that seem almost deliberate, yet lack the symmetry or functional clarity expected of engineered transport. What determined the paths of these channels? Were they dictated by topography, ritual, or some technique that is no longer known? Measurements have revealed inconsistencies that deepen the mystery. The distance between ruts can vary by as much as half a meter along the same line. Some researchers suggest that this could indicate different uses or vehicles, while others propose phases of modification over centuries. There is no contemporary record describing their construction or purpose. Their presence predates much of written Mediterranean history, leaving only physical evidence to guide interpretation. Alternative explanations have emerged, ranging from the plausible to the provocative. One suggests the ruts were irrigation channels or conduits for water transport, their paths designed to manage seasonal rainfall. Another theory argues they may have had ceremonial significance, linking sacred sites or guiding processions across the island in symbolic patterns. Some observers note that certain ruts terminate abruptly, not at quarry sites or settlements, but at cliffs or sheer rock faces, suggesting that their purpose was not solely practical. More speculative hypotheses take the enigma further. Could the ruts reflect a surveying system, a prehistoric map etched into stone for purposes we no longer understand? Could they have been part of a ritual or initiatory landscape where physical traversal mirrored spiritual journeys? Even the idea that they were cart tracks is debated. No remains of vehicles or wheel technology from the relevant period have been found on the island. And yet the grooves endure, carved with precision that seems impossible without repeated use, experience, and careful planning. Geology adds another layer to the puzzle. Some of the limestone on which the ruts are cut is relatively soft, yet other sections are far harder than Bronze Age tools would easily penetrate. How were the grooves maintained, extended, or deepened over time? How did prehistoric builders ensure consistency in depth and width across undulating terrain without modern leveling instruments? In some places, ruts appear to have been carved into bedrock while simultaneously following the contours of softer, eroded stone, an interplay that implies observation, adaptation, and perhaps techniques we cannot reconstruct today. The ruts' scale and distribution suggest that they were part of a wider system, not isolated experiments. Clusters appear on multiple islands, occasionally linking quarries, settlements, and temples, though no comprehensive network has yet been mapped. Were these ancient roads purely functional, or did they encode symbolic meaning, guiding movement according to cosmological or religious principles? And if so, what knowledge of engineering, landscape, or ritual informed their creation? Walking along a series of ruts today, it is impossible not to sense their deliberate rhythm. The grooves run straight, turn sharply, and sometimes end abruptly, as if narrating a story in stone that no one alive can read. Sunlight traces their edges, highlighting wear patterns and subtle undulations. Each line raises more questions than it answers. Who made these channels? Why were they so meticulously carved yet so inconsistent? And how did a culture without wheels or metal tools manage to leave an enduring record of movement across the island? The Malta cart ruts endure as a silent testament to ingenuity and mystery. They remind us that the past was not always pragmatic in the way modern minds expect. Sometimes purpose is layered, technique is lost, and intention survives only in the traces left behind. And as the grooves stretch across hills, cliffs, and valleys, one question remains. What was the full story of these channels? And what secrets do they hold, etched in stone for thousands of years, waiting for someone to understand? From the sun-scorched limestone of Malta, where deep grooves trace the passage of unknown hands and impossible engineering, our journey moves across oceans and forests to the dense jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula. Here, beneath the thick canopy of Guatemala, lie the ruins of Uaxactun, a city of silence, stone, and stars. Unlike the linear mystery of the Maltese Ruts, Uaxactun presents a different kind of enigma, a carefully aligned network of pyramids, platforms, and plazas whose purpose reaches far beyond simple construction. At first glance, Uaxactun appears as a cluster of time-worn mounds, half swallowed by the jungle, their stone facades softened by moss and vines. Yet the further one explores, the more deliberate its design becomes. Central plazas are flanked by pyramids of varying height and orientation. Some rise in stepped precision, their terraces forming platforms that once held ritual structures or observation posts. The city is arranged with a clarity that hints at purpose, but the reasoning behind it remains tantalizingly out of reach. Archaeologists date the earliest occupation of Uaxactun to around 600 BCE during the pre-classic Maya period. Over the centuries, it evolved into a center of both civic and ceremonial significance. But what sets Uaxactun apart from other Maya sites is its apparent role as an observatory. Several pyramids and platforms are aligned with astronomical events, the solstices, equinoxes, and key positions of Venus. These alignments suggest a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, far beyond mere practicality. The Maya could have used these structures to track time, plan agricultural cycles, or coordinate ceremonial life. Yet the precision with which they were executed remains striking, even by modern standards. Mainstream interpretation emphasizes the connection between architecture and astronomy. The observation platforms likely allowed priests and scholars to track the sun's path across the sky, or to predict seasonal shifts vital for maize cultivation. Certain structures, when viewed from specific vantage points, frame the rising sun on equinox days perfectly between temple corners, suggesting intentional planning. The Maya had no telescopes or modern instruments, yet their observations rival the accuracy of devices invented millennia later. Yet the deeper one examines Uaxactun, the more its mysteries multiply. Some alignments seem almost too precise, implying methods of measurement and record-keeping that are difficult to reconstruct archaeologically. How did the Maya account for subtle shifts in the sun's trajectory over decades? Were there tools or techniques lost to time, or was this level of precision achieved entirely through observation and intuition? And why, in such an advanced site, do we find structures whose function remains entirely opaque? Small, isolated platforms with no apparent access or ceremonial purpose. The very construction of Uaxactun adds another layer of intrigue. The pyramids and temples are built with limestone blocks, carefully cut and fitted, their exteriors once coated with plaster and pigments. Terraces were leveled with precision, and drainage systems were embedded to protect the structures from erosion. Considering the dense jungle environment and the limitations of tools available, The level of skill and organization required is remarkable. Did the Maya possess a body of knowledge, engineering, surveying, astronomy, that has since disappeared? And if so, how much of it was encoded in stone rather than recorded in glyphs? Cultural and ritual dimensions further complicate understanding. Uaxactun's plazas and pyramids were not simply observational. They were imbued with spiritual significance. Ceremonies, offerings, and perhaps even sacrifices likely occurred atop these platforms, intertwining the practical tracking of celestial bodies with cosmological meaning. Could the precise alignment of structures have been a ritual itself, an enactment of celestial cycles on Earth? And if so, what did that mean for those who experienced it? Priests, nobles, and common citizens alike. Speculative interpretations push the mystery even further. Some scholars have suggested that the site may encode information about planetary motion, cycles of Venus, or even more complex astronomical phenomena. Others have wondered if hidden chambers or platforms, yet undiscovered beneath overgrown mounds, might reveal additional methods or knowledge once integral to the observatory's function. Could Uaxactun represent a repository of pre-Columbian science that exceeds what we currently comprehend, a stone archive of celestial observation preserved in architecture? Perhaps the most compelling mystery of Uaxactun lies in its silence. Unlike later Maya cities, which left extensive inscriptions and codices, Uaxactun offers few written records. What we see is structure without narrative, observation without explicit explanation. The city itself speaks in stone, shadow, and alignment, leaving interpretation to those willing to read the patterns, the angles, and the light. Walking among its ruins today, one is struck by the interplay of precision and obscurity. Sunlight moves across terraces as it did centuries ago. The jungle presses in, reclaiming spaces once swept clean for ceremony. One can imagine priests tracking the solstice sun, marking time, and performing rituals that harmonized human life with the cosmos. And yet, as the structures endure, so too does their mystery. Uaxactun reminds us that the ancient world was capable of extraordinary insight, yet often chose to preserve that insight in forms that resist direct explanation. Its pyramids align, measure, and endure, but the full meaning behind their arrangement remains elusive. And as the sun rises over the stone terraces today, one question lingers. What knowledge of the heavens, of time, and of human experience was encoded here, and how much of it remains hidden, waiting to be rediscovered in the patterns of shadow and stone? From the dense jungles of Guatemala, where Uaxactun rises as a silent observatory of stone and sky, our journey now returns to the mountains of Europe, to a valley carved over millennia by rivers and glaciers. Val Camonica in northern Italy stretches like a hidden amphitheater of rock, its slopes etched with marks that defy simple explanation. Here, on the faces of cliffs and boulders, thousands of petroglyphs await, an intricate tapestry of human expression, yet one that remains deeply mysterious. At first glance, the carvings seem deceptively simple: figures of humans, animals, symbols, geometric shapes. But as the eye follows the grooves, the complexity becomes apparent. Some images depict hunting scenes, ritual dances, or ceremonial gatherings. Others show abstract forms, spirals, crosses, enigmatic lines that resist straightforward interpretation. Scholars have identified over 140,000 carvings in the valley, ranging in date from the Epipaleolithic period through the Iron Age, spanning several thousand years. The continuity of engraving and the sheer density of imagery suggests Val Camonica was more than a collection of art. It was a landscape of communication, memory, and meaning. Archaeological research reveals that the rock engravings were created using stone tools, pecking and chiseling into the granite and sandstone surfaces. Mainstream interpretations emphasize practical and symbolic functions. Some images likely recorded everyday life, hunting, farming, conflict. Others may have marked territorial boundaries or commemorated significant events. And yet, the more detailed and abstract carvings, interwoven patterns, concentric circles, human-animal hybrids, resist conventional explanations. What did these symbols mean to those who etched them, and why were some repeated across generations with such consistency? The precision and persistence of the engravings pose their own puzzle. Many carvings are located in places that are difficult to reach, on steep cliffs or sloped rock faces. Others are positioned to catch the light at specific times of day, or to align with seasonal shifts in the sun. Did these placements carry symbolic or ritual significance? Were the artists attempting to link human activity with natural cycles, or perhaps with cosmological understanding? Some researchers suggest the engravings formed a sacred geography, a network of sites through which spiritual energy flowed or ceremonial routes unfolded. Val Camonica also contains recurring motifs that remain mysterious. Stylized communion rose spirals, abstract geometric patterns, and enigmatic human figures with exaggerated features appear repeatedly. These symbols do not correspond neatly to any known written language or codified system. Could they represent proto-writing, or a symbolic language now lost to time? Some theorists propose that the carvings encode calendars, genealogies, or astronomical observations, but evidence is fragmentary. How much knowledge was intentionally encoded, and how much was simply ritual expression? The rock engravings also reveal the passage of centuries in subtle ways. Layers of carving suggest repeated use of the same surfaces, with new images overlapping older ones. This indicates that Val Camonica was not only a site of creation, but also of remembrance, an enduring canvas where generations engaged with their predecessors' work. Did later artists understand the original meanings, or did they reinterpret them for new purposes? And if reinterpretation occurred, how much of the original knowledge has been obscured by time? Speculative interpretations extend beyond conventional analysis. Some observers note that certain carvings depict human figures with unusual postures or elongated forms, or animals with strange features, suggesting ritualistic or visionary experiences. Others have drawn parallels between the spirals, lines, and geometric forms in Val Camonica, and similar motifs in other prehistoric sites across Europe and beyond, hinting at shared symbolic traditions or cosmologies. Could these images represent not just everyday life, but altered states of consciousness, shamanic journeys, or metaphysical understanding? Environmental context adds another layer of intrigue. The valley itself is shaped by rivers, steep slopes, and glacial formations, creating a dramatic natural stage for human expression. Certain rock faces seem to have been chosen for visibility from afar, while others are hidden, accessible only by deliberate effort. Why did ancient artists select these precise locations? Were some carvings intended to communicate across distance or to interact with natural phenomena, light, shadow, reflection, or sound? Walking through Val Camonica today, the engravings speak in silence. Fingers trace grooves worn smooth over millennia. Sunlight illuminates patterns that shift with the hour, casting shadows that bring abstract forms to life. One can almost imagine ritual gatherings, storytelling, or silent contemplation unfolding among these rocks. And yet, as with so many ancient sites, the evidence offers only fragments of meaning. The culture that created these carvings has left no written explanation, and the symbols themselves resist translation. Val Camonica reminds us that human expression does not always conform to modern expectations of practicality or clarity. It is possible to record, commemorate, and communicate without leaving behind a readable message. The valley preserves intention without narrative, memory without translation. The more we study it, the more we realize how much has been lost and how much remains to be discovered. And so, as the wind whispers through the alpine valleys and sunlight shifts across the carved surfaces, one question lingers. What knowledge, beliefs, or stories were encoded into these rocks? And how many of their secrets remain hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to decipher the silent language of stone? From the carved stones of Val Camonica, where generations etched symbols into rock to preserve memory and belief, our journey now moves south and east across the Mediterranean to the rugged Anatolian plateau. Here lies Hattusa, once the formidable capital of the Hittite Empire, a city of limestone walls, winding streets, and gates that have survived millennia of weather and human upheaval. Most visitors know the Lion Gate or the monumental Sphinx Gate, but beyond these iconic entrances lie lesser-known gates, quiet sentinels whose design and purpose still elude complete understanding. These lesser-known gates are often overlooked. Unlike the ceremonial grandeur of the main entrances, they appear utilitarian, narrower passages framed by massive stone blocks, sometimes partially collapsed, sometimes preserved only as foundations. Yet, closer inspection reveals careful construction, precisely cut stones, angled supports, and traces of intricate jointing that suggest intentional design. They do not merely block passage, they control it, guiding movement, restricting access, and perhaps marking thresholds in ways that were as much psychological as functional. Archaeologists date the city's expansion to the late Bronze Age, roughly 1600 to 1200 BCE, when Hattusa rose to prominence as a political and religious hub. The city's walls and gates were part of a highly organized urban plan, reflecting both defensive necessity and ceremonial significance. The lesser-known gates, scattered across secondary routes, may have controlled access to administrative districts, royal precincts, or storage areas. Their placements suggest careful attention to flow, visibility, and perhaps symbolic thresholds, boundaries that separated common citizens from priests, traders from soldiers, or the profane from the sacred. Yet the more we study these gates, the less straightforward they appear. Some are positioned in unexpected locations, leading to open courtyards or dead ends. Others are flanked by walls that curve unusually, creating angles that are difficult to traverse efficiently. What dictated their design? Purely strategic concerns, ritual considerations, or something we cannot now perceive? Even the size and proportion of stones used vary within the same gate complex, raising questions about construction methods, labor organization, and architectural knowledge. Mainstream interpretation emphasizes defensive and administrative function. Hittite builders needed to protect the city against invasion, control internal traffic, and manage the flow of goods and people. The gates may have served as checkpoints, bottlenecks designed to slow movement and provide tactical advantage. Inscriptions found on certain nearby stones suggest ceremonial or dedicatory functions, hinting that passage through a gate could carry symbolic weight as well. Yet mysteries persist. Some gates appear over-engineered relative to their apparent use. Massive stones and precise joinery were invested in entrances that saw minimal traffic. Why expend such effort here? Were these gates symbolic, demonstrating power and authority rather than simply serving practical function? Did they mark liminal spaces between civic and sacred zones, or between public and restricted areas? The Hittites left no explicit records explaining their architectural reasoning, leaving modern researchers to interpret through observation, comparison, and educated conjecture. The construction techniques themselves raise further questions. Some gates incorporate enormous stones weighing several tons, carefully fitted without mortar. The precision required to move, lift, and position these blocks exceeds what might be expected for a city of this period. How were these stones transported and hoisted? What tools or methods allowed the Hittites to achieve such accuracy repeatedly across dozens of gates in a terrain that is uneven and rocky? The answers remain partially elusive. Speculative interpretations add another layer of intrigue. Certain gates are aligned along lines of sight that connect with temples, high points, or distant hills. Could these gates have functioned as markers in a symbolic landscape, guiding ritual processions, astronomical observation, or religious ceremonies? Others note peculiar patterns of erosion and wear along thresholds, as if certain paths were frequently used in ceremonial contexts while others were deliberately avoided. What did this say about social hierarchy, sacred movement, or controlled access within the city? Some researchers have proposed that the gates themselves were more than physical barriers. They were instruments of power. Their architecture may have been designed to inspire awe, disorientation, or reverence. Passing through a narrow, angled entrance flanked by massive stone blocks could have been a sensory experience, signaling entry into a zone of authority, a sacred precinct, or a controlled environment. If so, the gates represent an understanding of human psychology as well as masonry, knowledge that has been partially lost to history. Walking among these lesser-known gates today, the city feels alive in absence. Stones hum with the weight of centuries, shadows stretch across angled thresholds, and the irregular curves of walls evoke deliberate intention. The air is thick with silence, yet the stones themselves seem to hold stories of governance, ritual, and human ingenuity. One cannot help but wonder what instructions, social rules, or spiritual significance were embedded in these thresholds, understood by the inhabitants of Hattusa, but now inaccessible to us. The Hittites, through their walls and gates, left a legacy of both endurance and enigma. While some of the city's structures have been thoroughly studied, the minor entrances continue to defy full comprehension. They remind us that in ancient civilizations, not every creation was meant to be obvious. Some were functional, some ceremonial, some symbolic, and some may have been deliberately complex to resist casual understanding. And as sunlight filters across the worn stones, illuminating edges carved with care, one question lingers. What knowledge of control, ritual, or hidden meaning did these gates encode, and how much of the Hittite worldview remains locked within thresholds we have yet to fully interpret? From the massive stone thresholds of Hattusa, where the Hittites left both authority and mystery carved into limestone, our journey once again crosses continents and eras, returning to the highlands of South America. In the northern Andean valleys of Peru, at an altitude of over 3,000 meters, rises the Chavin de Huantar complex, a labyrinthine city of stone, canals, and temples. Here, the past is layered not only in walls, but in shadows, where architecture, water, and ritual intersect in ways that continue to puzzle researchers and captivate imagination. At first glance, Chavin de Huantar appears as a sprawling arrangement of terraces and plazas, carved into the steep slopes of the Andean mountains. Yet a closer look reveals a sophistication that is extraordinary for its time, dating back to roughly 900 BCE. The complex is organized around a central ceremonial nucleus, pyramidal structures, sunken plazas, and subterranean galleries that converge in deliberate alignment. Stone walls rise with meticulous precision, and intricate carvings, serpents, jaguars, and anthropomorphic figures decorate their surfaces, blending natural and supernatural imagery. The site is both monumental and mysterious, designed to be experienced as much as observed. Mainstream archaeology interprets Chavin de Huantar as a major religious center, a pilgrimage site that exerted influence across the northern Andes. The Chavin culture appears to have mastered hydraulic engineering, channeling water through underground galleries and surface canals that carry sound as well as liquid. Some scholars suggest that these channels created acoustical effects, amplifying ritual chants or instruments and transforming perception during ceremonies. The combination of visual, spatial, and auditory design implies an intentional orchestration of human experience, an immersive environment where architecture, nature, and ritual converge. Yet, as with many ancient sites, Chavin de Huantar resists simple explanation. The underground galleries, carved through solid rock, connect different platforms, but their full function remains uncertain. Some tunnels end abruptly, others lead into hidden chambers. The precision required to carve these spaces with tools available at the time is remarkable. How did the builders achieve such accuracy without written plans, standardized measures, or modern surveying instruments? And what knowledge guided the integration of stone, water, and sound to produce effects that are still perceptible today? The art and iconography at Chavin add further complexity. The famous Lanzon, a carved granite monolith at the center of the temple, depicts a figure that is simultaneously human, feline, and serpentine. Surrounding galleries feature carved reliefs of jaguar fangs, snakes, and complex geometric patterns. Scholars generally interpret these images as symbolic of spiritual or shamanic practices, reflecting beliefs in transformation, duality, and the interconnection of the natural and supernatural. Yet the symbolic language remains opaque. Could these carvings also encode calendrical, astronomical, or cosmological knowledge that we have yet to decode? The layout of the complex itself raises additional questions. Terraces, plazas, and temples are aligned along precise axes, but these do not correspond neatly to topography or obvious celestial markers. Was the alignment purely aesthetic, symbolic, or functional? Could the arrangement reflect social hierarchy, ritual procession routes, or unseen cosmological principles? Some researchers have proposed that Chavin de Huantar functioned as an early knowledge hub, a place where spiritual, political, and environmental wisdom was concentrated, encoded into stone, and passed down orally to successive generations. Speculative theories go further. The combination of underground tunnels, hydraulic engineering, and carved iconography has led some to propose that Chavin de Huantar functioned as a sensory laboratory, a controlled environment where initiates experienced altered perception through sound, echo, and ritualized movement. Others note the sophisticated stonework and alignment as evidence of knowledge that may have exceeded contemporary understanding of hydraulics, acoustics, or structural engineering. Could this knowledge have been deliberately esoteric, shared only with initiates, leaving outsiders to witness wonder without comprehension? Environmental context deepens the intrigue. The site is nestled in a valley prone to seasonal flooding, yet the Chavin builders managed water with remarkable control. Channels, drains, and galleries redirect flow, preventing destruction while simultaneously integrating the element into the ceremonial experience. How did a society without written mathematics or advanced engineering predict, manipulate, and incorporate natural forces so effectively? And did this mastery extend to hidden symbolic or ritual knowledge now lost? Walking through Chavin de Huantar today, the sense of intention is palpable. Stone walls hum in resonance when water flows beneath them. Carved figures peer from niches, their forms simultaneously familiar and alien. Terraces rise and fall in orchestrated rhythm, leading the eye along paths that hint at ceremony, hierarchy, and cosmic order. One can imagine priests guiding pilgrims through galleries, sound and shadow shaping perception, and the sacred landscape itself teaching lessons that no text could capture. Chavin de Huantar stands as a testament to human ingenuity, spirituality, and the enduring capacity for mystery. Its creators manipulated stone, water, and space with sophistication that challenges modern assumptions about technological and cultural capability. And yet, despite centuries of study, many questions remain. How did they conceive, plan, and execute such a complex site? What symbolic or spiritual knowledge was encoded into every wall, canal, and carving, and how much of this understanding has been irretrievably lost to time? As sunlight filters into subterranean galleries and casts shadows across carved reliefs, one thought endures. Chavin de Huantar is more than architecture. It is an experience, a lesson in human perception, and a riddle carved in stone. And standing amid its terraces, tunnels, and temples, one cannot help but wonder, what secrets lie still hidden within its walls, waiting to reveal themselves to those patient enough to listen, observe, and imagine? From the highland temples of Chavin de Huantar, where stone, water, and ritual converge in deliberate complexity, our journey now moves northward across continents, from the Andes to the glacial shores of North America. Beneath the waves of Lake Michigan, in murky, freshwater depths, lies a site that evokes a familiar echo of Europe, yet defies conventional understanding. A circle of massive stones arranged with geometric precision. Known colloquially as the Lake Michigan Stonehenge, this underwater formation challenges expectations of prehistoric engineering in North America. The site is not immediately visible to the casual observer. It lies roughly 40 to 50 feet below the lake's surface, resting on the sandy and gravelly bed of the Great Lake. Divers describe a series of large, upright stones arranged in circular and linear patterns, some reaching several feet in height. The formation appears deliberate. Stones are evenly spaced, oriented along axes, and clustered to suggest structural or ceremonial purpose. Surrounding the primary circle, smaller stones form radial patterns and alignments that hint at planning beyond mere coincidence. Radiocarbon dating of nearby organic material suggests that the site could be as much as 10,000 years old, placing it near the end of the last ice age. If confirmed, this would make it one of the earliest known monumental constructions in North America, predating established mound-building cultures and challenging conventional assumptions about early human settlement and engineering in the Great Lakes region. Mainstream archaeology remains cautious, noting that direct excavation is complicated by the lake's depth and sedimentation. Yet the geometric arrangement, consistency in spacing, and sheer size of the stones suggest intentionality beyond natural deposition. Some researchers propose a functional interpretation. The stones may have been part of a fish weir or other aquatic trapping system. This is plausible, given the importance of fish in prehistoric diets and the placement near seasonal migration paths. Yet the complexity of the arrangement, the precise circular pattern, radial alignments, and upright positioning of massive stones suggests a purpose that exceeds mere practicality. Could this have been a ceremonial site, a gathering place for ritual observances, or even a solar or lunar observatory designed to track celestial events over water? The Lake Michigan Stonehenge evokes questions similar to those surrounding other prehistoric sites. How were such massive stones transported and positioned by communities without advanced machinery? Were they levered into place, floated on crude rafts, or moved using techniques now lost to time? And why construct such a structure beneath the water, in a location that would now seem inhospitable to large gatherings? Some suggest that during the time of construction, lake levels were much lower, exposing portions of the site to air. Even so, the scale and precision remain remarkable. Symbolism may also have played a role. The circular arrangement recalls other ancient henges, circles, and ceremonial enclosures found worldwide, suggesting a universal human impulse to delineate sacred space. Could the circle have been a focal point for social cohesion, ritual performance, or astronomical observation? Some alignments appear to correspond roughly with solstitial sunrises and sunsets, though verification is complicated by shifting lake levels and sediment accumulation over millennia. Yet the very possibility raises profound questions. What knowledge of the sky, the seasons, and human perception did these builders possess? And how was it embedded into stone beneath water? Speculative interpretations deepen the mystery. Some observers note that the radial stones could represent a form of proto-calendar, encoding seasonal or ecological cycles crucial to survival. Others propose that the site may have been intentionally submerged after construction, either due to rising water levels or deliberate ritual flooding, a symbolic act of transition, offering, or concealment. Could this Stonehenge have functioned as a liminal space, marking thresholds between life and death, the terrestrial and the aquatic, the human and the divine? Environmental and geological factors further complicate understanding. The stones rest on a lake bed shaped by glacial retreat, sediment deposits, and fluctuating water levels over thousands of years. Some stones are partially buried. Others lean as if settling into shifting sands. How much of the original configuration has survived intact, and how much has been altered by natural processes? These variables challenge attempts to reconstruct the original design and function, leaving interpretation necessarily provisional. Standing on the edge of the lake today, imagining the site beneath the dark water, one feels a profound sense of continuity and absence. The stones, silent and unyielding, bear witness to a people whose presence is now largely erased from memory. Yet they also speak of intention, ingenuity, and the impulse to create, encode, and memorialize knowledge in physical form. The underwater Stonehenge reminds us that monumental effort was not confined to land, and that the first builders of North America may have possessed skills and perspectives that we can scarcely reconstruct. The Lake Michigan Stonehenge continues to challenge expectations about early human capability in North America. Its construction, location, and possible purpose resist simple explanation. Was it practical, ceremonial, astronomical, or symbolic, or some combination of all these? How many similar structures lie hidden beneath the waters of the Great Lakes, yet to be discovered? And perhaps most compelling of all, what knowledge and cultural sophistication might be lost to us forever, encoded silently in stone beneath the depths? As the lake's waves lap quietly above the submerged circle, the formation endures, unseen by most yet enduring through millennia. And in its silent persistence, one question remains. What secrets lie beneath the waters of Lake Michigan? And how much of early human ingenuity has yet to reveal itself, waiting patiently beneath the surface for discovery? From the murky depths of Lake Michigan, where submerged stones hint at forgotten rituals and lost knowledge, our journey turns once more toward the Mediterranean, to the rugged and windswept landscapes of Sardinia. Here, in the arid plains near Cabras on the western coast, a discovery in the 1970s shook archaeologists and challenged conventional understandings of prehistoric art and monumental construction, the giants of Monte. These ancient stone figures, standing as silent sentinels across millennia, invite questions that remain unanswered to this day. At first sight, the statues are striking in their scale and form. Carved from local sandstone, many of the figures stand between 2 and 3 meters tall, their proportions bold and deliberate. Shield-bearing warriors, archers, and boxers populate the site, each figure articulated with geometric precision and stylized abstraction. The faces, with their deep-set eyes and pronounced features, seem to convey both authority and presence, despite the millennia of exposure to wind, rain, and human activity. Even in fragments, these statues emanate a sense of monumental purpose. The giants of Monte are generally dated to the Nuragic civilization, roughly 1100 to 800 BCE, though some evidence suggests earlier phases of construction. The figures were discovered in burial grounds, associated with stone towers known as nuraghi, but their purpose remains enigmatic. Were they guardians of the dead, commemorations of revered warriors, or symbolic representations of deities? The scale and craftsmanship indicate highly organized labor and specialized skill, remarkable for a culture that did not leave extensive written records. Mainstream archaeological interpretation emphasizes funerary and ritual function. Many of the statues were found lying on their backs, broken into segments, suggesting they were intentionally placed or perhaps ritually decommissioned after use. Some researchers propose that they were part of a cultic landscape, forming a visual network that linked nuraghi, tombs, and ceremonial spaces. Their construction required quarrying large blocks of sandstone, transporting them across uneven terrain, and sculpting with tools of bronze and stone, a formidable logistical challenge that testifies to both ingenuity and social organization. Yet the more the figures are studied, the more perplexing they become. The stylization of the bodies is highly abstract. Torsos are blocky, arms and legs sharply delineated, and proportions exaggerated in ways that suggest deliberate artistic choice rather than anatomical fidelity. Shields are often oversized, with intricate geometric patterns incised along their surfaces. Why did the sculptors choose such forms? Was it symbolic, perhaps encoding cosmological or martial ideals, or aesthetic, meant to convey power and presence at a distance? The intent behind these design choices remains elusive. Equally puzzling is the context of their creation. Monte Prama is not an isolated site. It lies within a densely populated nuragic region dotted with settlements, tombs, and nuraghi. Yet nowhere else in Sardinia do we find statuary of comparable size or precision. Why here? Why at this time? Some scholars suggest that the figures represented local elite power, monumentalized to assert dominance or commemorate warriors of exceptional skill. Others propose broader cultural or spiritual meanings, perhaps linked to solar, lunar, or seasonal cycles, though evidence is largely circumstantial. The technical skill required to craft the giants also raises questions. The sandstone is hard and resistant, yet the figures were carved with remarkable uniformity and geometric consistency. Certain statues feature symmetrical designs and repeating motifs that imply careful planning and measurement. How did nuragic artisans achieve this with the tools available to them? Could there have been standardized templates, lost techniques, or knowledge of proportions and surveying that no longer survives? The question lingers. Is this a level of craftsmanship we have yet to fully understand? Speculative interpretations further deepen the mystery. Some observers note that the positioning of the figures within the burial complex may reflect ritual choreography, as if the statues themselves were participants in ceremonies, frozen in perpetual motion. Others suggest that the figures were intended to convey a cosmological map, or encode martial and social hierarchy in visual form. A few fringe theories propose connections to broader Mediterranean networks, drawing parallels to Cycladic and Mycenaean art, though these remain contentious. What is clear is that the giants are not merely decorative. They were conceived with intention, imbued with meaning that has been largely lost to time. Environmental context also adds to the enigma. The plain of Monte Prama is exposed, with harsh winds and seasonal storms. Transporting massive sandstone blocks and assembling the statues would have required careful planning and coordination. What social structures enabled such labor-intensive projects? How did communities mobilize resources, knowledge, and skill to create these figures? And why did the practice vanish after only a few centuries? The disappearance of this monumental tradition adds another layer of unanswered questions. Walking among the fragments today, one is struck by both presence and absence. The broken torsos, severed limbs, and scattered heads convey a sense of loss, yet the energy of the original composition is palpable. Shield-bearing warriors still dominate the landscape, their silent vigilance echoing across millennia. They remind us that human ambition, artistry, and symbolic expression can transcend time, yet leave behind puzzles that challenge interpretation. The giants of Monte Prama endure as a testament to ingenuity, ritual, and the capacity for monumental expression in prehistoric Sardinia. Their existence raises questions about social organization, artistic skill, spiritual practice, and lost knowledge. And as the Mediterranean wind sweeps across the plain through fragments of shields and stylized torsos, one question lingers. What cultural memory, spiritual significance, or technical mastery did the creators of these giants encode into stone, and how much of it remains hidden, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover its meaning? From the windswept plains of Sardinia, where the giants of Monte stand as enduring testaments to human ambition and precision, our journey now carries us across the Pacific Ocean to one of the most remote and enigmatic landscapes on Earth, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Here, on volcanic soil sculpted by fire and time, lies Ahu Vinapu, a ceremonial platform whose carefully fitted stonework challenges conventional understanding of prehistoric engineering and hints at a mastery of geometry that continues to astonish archaeologists. Ahu Vinapu is at first striking for its austere elegance. Rising from the island's relatively flat interior, the platform is composed of massive volcanic stones, each carefully shaped and laid to form a wall of astonishing precision. Unlike the rough mortar-bound walls found in many ancient cultures, the stones at Vinapu fit together seamlessly, their contours matched with such exactitude that even a thin blade cannot slip between them. The blocks vary in size, from medium slabs to massive monoliths weighing several tons, yet each one is integrated into the structure with geometric consistency that evokes both calculation and artistry. Mainstream research dates the construction of Ahu Vinapu to the 11th to 15th centuries CE, during the height of Rapa Nui's monumental building period. The platform is oriented toward specific celestial markers, suggesting that it may have served ritual, astronomical, or social functions. Some archaeologists interpret Vinapu as a ceremonial focal point, perhaps associated with ancestor worship or as a stage for ritual performances. The precision of the stonework, however, has drawn comparisons to the megalithic masonry of the Incas, raising questions about the transfer of knowledge and the limits of prehistoric engineering on a remote Pacific island. The construction techniques alone are remarkable. Each stone had to be quarried from volcanic outcrops, transported across uneven terrain, and then shaped to interlock perfectly with neighboring blocks, all without iron tools or draft animals. The largest stones appear to have been positioned with levers, ropes, and sheer human ingenuity. How did the builders achieve such uniformity in angle and surface flatness? Were they guided by measuring devices now lost to time, or by a deeply intuitive understanding of geometry and load distribution? The wall's stability is such that, centuries later, they remain largely intact despite earthquakes, storms, and the passage of time. Ahu Vinapu's geometry is particularly intriguing. Scholars note that the walls exhibit near-perfect right angles, flat planes, and interlocking joints that suggest not just aesthetic intent, but structural calculation. Some have argued that the builders understood principles equivalent to modern engineering concepts, such as compression, tension, and weight distribution. The alignment of the platform with solar events adds another layer of sophistication, hinting at knowledge of astronomy integrated into architecture. Could this have been part of a wider system of measurement, a deliberate encoding of mathematical knowledge into the stone itself? Speculative theories invite further fascination. Some observers have proposed that Ahu Vinapu reflects cultural or technological influences beyond Rapa Nui, pointing to similarities with Andean stonework in Peru. While evidence of direct contact is limited, the precision of the masonry is nevertheless strikingly similar. Did the Rapa Nui develop these techniques independently, or does this hint at a lost exchange of ideas across the Pacific? Others suggest that the interlocking stones may have been designed to channel energy, echo ritual practices, or serve symbolic purposes, bridging the human and spiritual worlds in ways we can only begin to imagine. Environmental context adds to the wonder. The volcanic stones of Vinapu are hard and brittle, yet they were shaped with remarkable smoothness. The platform sits on a landscape shaped by wind, rain, and erosion, yet it remains stable, its walls resisting the shifting earth. How did the builders select stones with such care, and what methods allowed them to achieve enduring stability in a place exposed to the elements? Every corner and seam seems deliberately considered, as if the builders anticipated centuries of wear and still achieved perfection. Walking among the stones today, one is struck by both the scale and the subtlety of the work. From certain angles, the walls appear almost impossibly straight. Sunlight traces the edges of blocks, revealing the meticulous craftsmanship and the geometric rigor embedded in the design. It is a landscape of intention, where every stone carries both function and meaning. One can imagine ritual gatherings, chants, or ceremonies, and yet the true purpose, the full scope of the builder's knowledge remains tantalizingly out of reach. Ahu Vinapu exemplifies a recurring theme in prehistoric structures, the integration of mathematics, art, and social organization to produce monuments that endure far beyond their creators' lifetimes. It is a site where human ingenuity, geometry, and cultural expression converge, offering a glimpse into the minds of builders who understood principles we still struggle to replicate. And yet, for all the study and admiration, the complete story of Vinapu remains unresolved. As the wind sweeps across the platform, rustling the grass and illuminating the sharp edges of volcanic stone, one is left to ponder. How did a small, isolated society develop such mathematical and architectural sophistication? What knowledge, skill, and cultural insight went into each precisely fitted block? And, perhaps most compellingly, what secrets of construction, alignment, or ritual remain hidden, waiting quietly beneath the surface of stone and sand, ready to be discovered by those who look closely enough? From the precise and monumental stonework of Ahu Vinapu, where the Rapa Nui etched geometry and mathematics into volcanic stone, our journey now shifts northward, across oceans and deserts, to the high mesas and canyons of the American Southwest. Here, in the arid lands of what is now Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, lived a culture whose architectural and societal achievements continue to fascinate: the ancestral Puebloans, commonly known as the Anasazi. Their cliff dwellings, kivas, and ceremonial centers speak to a sophisticated understanding of space, structure, and community. But their sudden disappearance around the late 13th century remains one of North America's enduring mysteries. At first glance, the settlements are breathtaking in their integration with the landscape. Communities like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon appear almost impossibly perched, stone dwellings clinging to cliff faces, multi-story complexes rising from canyon floors, all aligned with astonishing precision. Roads radiate from ceremonial centers, kivas, circular subterranean chambers, hint at ritual and governance, and some structures show astronomical alignment, tracking solstices and equinoxes. These were not mere habitations. They were carefully orchestrated spaces reflecting social, spiritual, and practical knowledge honed over generations. The sophistication of Anasazi construction is remarkable. Stones were shaped and fitted with precision, mortar used sparingly, and multi-story buildings supported hundreds of inhabitants. Water management systems, including cisterns, canals, and reservoirs, demonstrate a nuanced understanding of hydrology in a desert environment. The scale of Chaco Canyon alone, with its massive great houses and precise alignment to cardinal directions and lunar cycles, suggests an advanced society with both engineering acumen and social organization capable of mobilizing labor across vast distances. Yet despite these achievements, the historical record shows that by the late 1200s, many Anasazi sites were abruptly abandoned. Hundreds of structures were left intact, often with valuables and daily tools, suggesting a rapid departure rather than a gradual decline. Mainstream explanations focus on environmental and social pressures, prolonged droughts, resource depletion, and climatic shifts that strained agricultural production. Evidence from tree rings, sediment cores, and pollen analysis supports this, indicating that water scarcity and soil exhaustion may have forced communities to migrate. Still, the disappearance is not fully explained. Many Anasazi roads and ceremonial sites seem intentionally abandoned rather than destroyed, suggesting deliberate migration or relocation. Why were certain communities left behind intact, while others in more marginal locations were abandoned or altered? And if environmental factors were solely responsible, why did the society's social and ceremonial sophistication persist until the very end, rather than collapsing gradually as one might expect? The layout of Chaco and other settlements adds to the mystery. Roads extend in straight lines for tens of miles, sometimes over rugged terrain, connecting ceremonial and residential centers with geometric precision. Some alignments correspond to solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles, raising questions about the role of astronomical knowledge in societal planning. Could these networks have been designed to guide not just travel, but ritual movement, trade, or communication over long distances? And if so, did the migration reflect a breakdown in environmental stability, a deliberate search for new ritual centers, or an unknown cultural shift? Speculative interpretations broaden the intrigue. Some suggest social upheaval or internal conflict may have contributed to the Anasazi exodus. Others point to the possibility of spiritual or ceremonial imperatives, perhaps sacred instructions, prophecies, or cosmological cycles dictated movement. The abrupt nature of departure, coupled with carefully left possessions and undisturbed ceremonial spaces, implies a society that left intentionally rather than being forcibly removed. Could there have been a cultural imperative to abandon certain sites, encoded in ritual or oral tradition, now lost to history? The scale and durability of their constructions also raise questions about lost knowledge. How did a pre-industrial society coordinate such labor-intensive building projects with astronomical and geometric precision? What social, mathematical, or observational methods allowed for the creation of multi-story cliff dwellings, ceremonial kivas, and expansive roads spanning tens of miles? And most hauntingly, how could a civilization capable of such architectural and environmental sophistication disappear so completely, leaving behind evidence but no clear record of why? Visiting these sites today, the sense of presence and absence is profound. The stone walls, still standing in desert silence, speak of communities that thrived, planned, and observed with care. Yet the absence of people, the empty kivas, and the abandoned granaries evoke a lingering question. Where did they go, and why? It is impossible not to feel both awe and unease, knowing that these intricate spaces were once full of life, thought, and intention, and then suddenly emptied, leaving only traces in stone and soil. The Anasazi Disappearance is a reminder that human ingenuity and societal complexity can exist alongside vulnerability and unpredictability. Their architectural precision, environmental adaptation, and ceremonial sophistication reveal knowledge we can still study and admire, but their sudden vanishing highlights how fragile even advanced societies can be in the face of changing conditions, internal dynamics, or imperceptible forces. As the sun sets over the mesas and canyons, casting long shadows across carefully laid stones, one is left with a question that resonates through time. What prompted a society capable of such remarkable achievements to leave their homes, roads, and sacred spaces behind? And what secrets of their knowledge culture and survival strategies might remain hidden in the walls, kivas, and roads of the Anasazi, waiting for those patient enough to uncover them. From the silent mesas of the American Southwest, where the Anasazi left behind stone dwellings and ceremonial kivas, whose precision and sudden abandonment continue to intrigue scholars, our journey turns now to the banks of the Nile, where a single slab of stone would alter our understanding of human communication. The Rosetta Stone, now encased behind glass in the British Museum, is one of history's most famous artifacts, a key that unlocked the long-silenced language of ancient Egypt. Yet even as it revealed secrets, it also poses an equally compelling question. Where did it come from? And why does a gap in its origin leave its story only partially told? At first glance, the Rosetta Stone is imposing in its simplicity. A slab of granodiorite, roughly 4 feet high and 2.5 feet wide, its surface is densely covered with inscriptions in 3 scripts: Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Ancient Greek. The text itself is a decree issued during the reign of Ptolemy V in 196 BCE, commemorating his coronation and religious generosity. Scholars have long marveled at the precision with which the inscriptions were carved, each symbol exact, each line perfectly aligned, an achievement of craftsmanship and planning. It is both a work of art and a tool of administration, combining linguistic complexity with geometric and visual order. The mainstream story of the Rosetta Stone's discovery is well known. Found by French soldiers in 1799 near the town of Rashid, Rosetta, during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, it quickly became the object of intense scholarly study. Its Greek inscription allowed Jean-François Champollion to finally decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs, bridging a gap of more than a millennium in understanding. Yet, while its importance as a linguistic key is undisputed, the circumstances of its origin remain enigmatic. The stone itself was repurposed from an earlier monument, and much of its history prior to being carved as a decree is lost to time. The origin gap raises multiple questions. Scholars have noted that the Rosetta Stone does not exist in isolation. Other fragments and similar decrees have been found in Egypt, yet none perfectly replicate its precise combination of scripts and inscriptions. Was the stone originally part of a larger monument, perhaps erected in a temple or royal courtyard? If so, what was the purpose of its positioning, and why was it later broken and relocated? The granodiorite itself was quarried from a region in the Nile Delta, but why this particular slab was chosen, how it was transported, and by whom, remain points of conjecture. The precision of the carving also suggests a highly skilled workforce. Each symbol, line, and letter was executed with exactitude, indicating standardized tools and methods. The hieroglyphs, in particular, demonstrate a mastery of proportional design, aligning visual hierarchy with linguistic meaning. Could this reflect a broader mathematical knowledge embedded in Egyptian scribal culture, where geometry and language intersected to convey both practical and symbolic authority? And if so, how was this knowledge transmitted, maintained, and applied across generations? Speculative interpretations extend the mystery further. Some researchers suggest that the stone's careful alignment of 3 scripts, spanning the sacred, administrative, and Greek literate communities, was itself a deliberate act of social engineering, codifying authority and communication across distinct cultural strata. Others point to the possibility that the Rosetta Stone, like other Egyptian monuments, may encode numerical, calendrical, or astronomical information within its inscriptions. Could the placement of symbols, the spacing of lines, or the proportions of the stone itself hold hidden layers of meaning we have yet to fully decode? The artifact's movement over time adds another layer of intrigue. After its discovery, it was seized by the British and transported to London, removing it from the context of its origin. Scholars today can study its inscriptions in detail, yet the surrounding landscape, the original temple or stela from which it came, is lost, leaving gaps in interpretation. How might its meaning shift if we could reconstruct the environment in which it was first installed? What social, religious, or political nuances remain inaccessible because we cannot observe the stone in its original spatial and ceremonial context? Even the stone's materiality contributes to the enigma. Granodiorite is heavy and difficult to work, yet the inscriptions are clean and precise. This reflects not only technical skill, but also a societal capacity to mobilize labor, plan complex projects, and integrate aesthetic, linguistic, and administrative goals into a single object. The Rosetta Stone is at once a monument to human ingenuity and a puzzle, revealing sophisticated craftsmanship, yet leaving its early history tantalizingly obscure. Walking before the artifact in the museum, one feels the presence of time pressing across the surface. The grooves of symbols, worn yet intact, hint at the hands that carved them and the society that commissioned them. But for all the knowledge it has unlocked, the Rosetta Stone retains a shadow of mystery. Its early history, the choices behind its creation, and the purpose of its original placement remain tantalizingly out of reach. The Rosetta Stone reminds us that even the most studied objects can harbor gaps in their story. It is both a bridge and a veil, a key to understanding one civilization, and a reminder that knowledge can be partial, fragmented, or displaced. As sunlight falls across its polished granodiorite in the mind's eye, one question lingers. What secrets of origin, purpose, or hidden knowledge lie buried in the Nile Delta, in quarries, temples, and courtyards, waiting to reveal themselves to those patient enough to trace the stone's path from creation to discovery? From the banks of the Nile, where the Rosetta Stone preserves words carved with meticulous precision, hinting at knowledge, authority, and mathematical thought, our journey returns to the rugged landscapes of Sardinia, where human ingenuity once took the form of an architectural enigma unlike any other. Monte Dakoti. Rising abruptly from the rolling plains near Sassari, this massive megalithic structure is often called a step pyramid, yet its purpose, origins, and design continue to provoke questions that linger across millennia. It is at once monumental and mysterious, a prehistoric testament to precision, planning, and perhaps knowledge that we can barely grasp today. Monte Dakoti dominates the landscape. Its base is a truncated square platform of carefully stacked limestone blocks, roughly 36 by 27 meters, forming a raised terrace. Atop this base rises a step-like structure, a steep, sloped platform that leads to a flat summit, accessible by a wide ramp aligned with the cardinal directions. From a distance, the mound seems almost impossibly geometric, its angles precise, its terraces exact, rising with a clarity and symmetry that evoke forethought and architectural mastery. The scale alone, standing approximately 12 meters high, signals that it was a construction of deliberate effort and communal coordination, requiring resources, labor, and planning. Archaeologists date Monte Dakoti to the late Neolithic period, around 4000 to 3600 BCE, making it older than the Egyptian pyramids and contemporary with early megalithic constructions in Malta and Iberia. Its purpose remains debated. Excavations have revealed altars, evidence of ritual offerings, and traces of ceramics, indicating that it functioned as more than a mere platform. Many scholars suggest it was a ceremonial center, possibly used for sacrifices or communal gatherings, while others propose astronomical purposes, observing celestial events or seasonal cycles. Yet, despite these studies, no definitive explanation fully accounts for its design or alignment. The precision of its construction is remarkable. Large limestone slabs, some weighing several tons, were quarried, transported, and positioned with care. The terraces are level, the steps consistent, and the ramp aligned with remarkable accuracy. How did Neolithic builders achieve such symmetry without standardized tools, written plans, or advanced surveying instruments? The structure demonstrates an understanding of geometry and spatial awareness far beyond what is typically expected of prehistoric societies. Could this imply a cultural or ritual system that incorporated mathematics, proportion, and measurement as integral to construction? The function of the summit adds further intrigue. Archaeological evidence suggests that ceremonies or offerings took place there, possibly involving fire, livestock, or other ritual elements. Its elevated position makes it visible from surrounding plains, and the orientation of the ramp and terraces may indicate a deliberate alignment with solstices or equinoxes. Could this have been a sacred observatory, marking agricultural cycles or celestial events critical to the community? And if so, how did the builders measure, plan, and execute such alignment with such precision, long before the advent of formal mathematics or engineering theory? Speculative interpretations broaden the mystery. Some researchers note striking parallels with Mesopotamian ziggurats and Near Eastern step structures, suggesting possible conceptual or cultural influence across vast distances. While direct contact is improbable given the era, the similarities raise tantalizing questions. Was there a shared understanding of architectural form in early civilizations, or is Monte an independent manifestation of universal geometric principles applied to ceremonial structures? Could these early builders have recognized and utilized mathematical ratios intuitively, encoding knowledge into stone without formalized notation? Environmental and material considerations deepen the enigma. The stones used in construction were quarried locally, yet shaping, transporting, and stacking them into a stable and symmetrical platform would have required sophisticated planning. Rain, wind, and seismic activity would have posed challenges to stability, yet the structure endures after more than 6,000 years. How did Neolithic engineers calculate load, balance, and proportion with such accuracy, and was this knowledge purely empirical or guided by principles now lost? Monte also raises questions about social organization. Coordinating labor, resources, and planning for a construction of this scale implies a hierarchical or communal system capable of organizing specialized roles. Who oversaw the work? How was knowledge transmitted across generations to maintain consistency in design and execution? Could the mound have served as both a religious and administrative center, a place where spatial order, social hierarchy, and ceremonial ritual intersected? The site's surrounding landscape contributes to its mystery. Monte stands in isolation on the plain, yet it is visible from miles around. The alignment of the ramp, terraces, and base suggests deliberate placement within the landscape, possibly in relation to distant hills, rivers, or other megalithic sites. Did this location hold symbolic significance, acting as a focal point for communal gatherings, territorial markers, or pilgrimage? And if so, what cultural knowledge guided these decisions, knowledge now irretrievably fragmented? Walking among the terraces and along the wide ramp, one senses the presence of intention in every carefully placed stone. The symmetry, the slope, and the flat summit convey purpose, yet the absence of written records leaves interpretation open. Archaeologists can infer, measure, and compare, but the cultural and spiritual significance of the site remains elusive. It is a structure designed to impress, to endure, and perhaps to communicate, yet the exact message remains just out of reach. Monte in its geometry and precision, exemplifies a recurring theme in prehistoric structures: the interplay of mathematics, ritual, and social organization. It demonstrates that even societies without written language or advanced tools could conceive, plan, and execute monumental works that align with both physical and possibly celestial dimensions. And yet, despite centuries of study, the mound retains a veil of mystery, a reminder that human ingenuity often leaves more questions than answers. As the Sardinian sun casts long shadows across the terraces, illuminating the carefully fitted stones, one cannot help but wonder what knowledge of proportion, astronomy, and ritual guided the builders of Monte de Coti. How much of their cultural and mathematical understanding has been lost to time, encoded silently in stone? And perhaps most compellingly, what secrets remain hidden beneath the layers of earth and limestone, waiting for future generations to uncover the full story of this enigmatic prehistoric monument? From the wind-swept plains of Sardinia, where Monte de Coti rises as a testament to Neolithic ingenuity and mathematical precision, our journey now takes us northward, across Europe, and into the remote and rugged landscapes of northern Russia. Here, amidst moss-covered rocks and the silent sweep of forests and tundra, lie a series of enigmatic stone constructions, labyrinths whose origins, purpose, and method of construction have long baffled archaeologists and adventurers alike. These are the stone labyrinths of Russia, or Vozrozhdenie, as they are sometimes called in local lore, prehistoric arrangements of rock whose form is as precise as it is mysterious. At first glance, the labyrinths are deceptively simple. Viewed from ground level, they appear as intricate mazes of stones, arranged in elongated spirals, meandering channels, and concentric circles. The stones themselves are rough, unshaped rocks, yet their placement suggests careful calculation, forming patterns that cannot be attributed to random placement or natural formations. Some labyrinths extend tens of meters in length, their pathways leading to dead ends, central stones, or small altars. Aerial perspectives reveal geometric precision that is otherwise invisible from the ground, suggesting that the creators had not only the ability to conceptualize large-scale patterns, but also an understanding of spatial planning that seems strikingly sophisticated for prehistoric peoples. Mainstream research has dated the labyrinths primarily to the Bronze Age, approximately 3000 to 2000 BCE, though carbon dating and stratigraphic analysis are limited due to the paucity of organic materials directly associated with the constructions. Found along coastlines, riverbanks, and in isolated upland regions, the labyrinths are often clustered near other prehistoric artifacts, tools, pottery shards, and stone alignments, yet no inscriptions or written records accompany them. Their purpose remains speculative, with mainstream interpretations ranging from ritualistic or religious use to navigational aids or astronomical observatories. Yet none of these explanations fully accounts for the precision, repetition, and scale of the labyrinths. The construction of the labyrinths raises profound questions. Without metal tools or advanced machinery, prehistoric builders manipulated large quantities of heavy stone into meticulously organized patterns. Pathways are uniformly spaced, alignments appear intentional, and the orientation of many labyrinths corresponds to cardinal points or notable solar and lunar events. Could these arrangements reflect an early understanding of geometry or mathematical principles encoded into physical form? And if so, how was this knowledge transmitted, maintained, and applied without written notation, standardized measurement systems, or surveying instruments? The labyrinths themselves invite reflection on human cognition and ritual. Some scholars propose that they were used in ceremonial processions, their pathways acting as controlled routes for initiation, meditation, or spiritual journeys. Walking the stone channels, even today, evokes a sense of purpose. Each turn, each dead end, feels intentional, designed to create a psychological and sensory experience. Could these labyrinths have functioned as symbolic representations of the cosmos, mirrors of the human psyche, or ritual landscapes designed to connect communities with unseen forces? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some suggest that the labyrinths encode astronomical or calendrical knowledge, with pathways aligned to solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles. Others argue that they may have been constructed as territorial markers, demonstrating communal effort and social cohesion. Yet a striking feature of many Russian labyrinths is their consistency. Stones are arranged with geometric precision across vast distances, hinting at standardized planning principles or shared cultural knowledge. How could such patterns arise independently in disparate locations, and what motivated communities to replicate them so faithfully over centuries? Environmental context adds to the mystery. Many labyrinths are situated on coastlines, where rising sea levels and erosion have partially buried or altered the original designs. Others rest on rocky outcrops, where the effort required to assemble the stones would have been considerable. The enduring stability of these constructions over millennia suggests that the builders understood not only geometry, but also the physical properties of stone, balance, and friction. Could this represent an early application of practical engineering principles intertwined with spiritual or cultural intent? The labyrinth's presence across northern Russia also raises questions about communication, migration, and knowledge transfer in prehistoric societies. How did isolated communities, separated by forests, rivers, and mountains, develop such similar constructions? Were these labyrinths independently conceived, reflecting universal patterns of human thought and ritual, or do they hint at an early network of cultural exchange previously unrecognized? The scale, placement, and consistency of design imply a depth of understanding and coordination that continues to surprise modern observers. Walking through a labyrinth today, one experiences a tangible sense of human intention. Stones rise along the pathways, guiding movement, framing sightlines, and creating an immersive environment that engages both body and mind. Each turn seems deliberate, each dead end purposeful, forming an experience that is at once physical, psychological, and perhaps spiritual. And yet, despite their clarity of form, the meaning of the labyrinths is obscured by time. We can measure distances, note alignments, and map patterns, but we cannot know the ceremonies, the beliefs, or the motivations that inspired their construction. The stone labyrinths of Russia thus exemplify a recurring theme in prehistoric architecture: the integration of geometric precision, social organization, and cultural expression. They demonstrate that even societies lacking written language or advanced tools could conceive and execute monumental designs that convey both mathematical understanding and human intent. Yet they also remind us of the fragility of knowledge. Structures that persist for millennia may still harbor mysteries beyond our comprehension, leaving us to infer, hypothesize, and wonder. As the northern sun slants across moss-covered stones, and the wind whispers through the gaps in the labyrinth channels, one is struck by the enduring presence of human thought and creativity. Each labyrinth embodies labor, planning, and intentionality, and yet, like so many prehistoric constructions, it retains its secrets. How did these ancient builders plan, measure, and execute their designs with such precision? What rituals, beliefs, or knowledge were encoded into the stones themselves? And perhaps most compellingly, what other labyrinths, aligned with the stars or hidden deep in the forests, await discovery, holding truths about human ingenuity that time has only partially revealed? The Russian stone labyrinths endure as silent teachers of precision, design, and cultural depth. Their patterns invite exploration, contemplation, and study, yet resist definitive explanation. They challenge our assumptions about prehistoric capabilities and hint at a knowledge of mathematics, spatial reasoning, and ritual experience that we are only beginning to understand. And in their quiet persistence across tundra, forest, and rocky coast, one question remains: what other lessons, encoded in stone and waiting patiently across the landscape, might yet emerge to reshape our understanding of humanity's earliest architects and thinkers? From the frozen labyrinths of northern Russia, where prehistoric communities left behind stone channels of precise geometry, our journey now arcs across the globe to the islands of Japan, where the landscape is dotted with monumental earthen constructions that have stood for over a millennium. These are the Kofun burial mounds, vast, keyhole-shaped tombs built to honor and enshrine the elite of early Japanese society. Rising from plains, hilltops, and coastal terraces, the mounds are more than mere graves. They are expressions of power, social organization, and, as recent studies suggest, precise mathematical and geometric planning that continues to intrigue scholars today. The first impression of a Kofun mound is its scale and form. Some, like the Daisen Kofun in Osaka, span nearly 500 meters in length, forming an elongated keyhole shape that is visible from surrounding hills and rivers. Others are smaller, yet all share an unmistakable symmetry. A circular rear mound seamlessly connected to a rectangular or trapezoidal forecourt, often surrounded by moats and defensive embankments. The surfaces are carefully layered, with stones, soil, and clay compacted in ways that have preserved the mound's forms for centuries. From above, the precision is striking. The curves, proportions, and alignments suggest deliberate design, not the haphazard accumulation of earth. Mainstream archaeology dates the Kofun period roughly from the 3rd to the 7th century CE, a time of burgeoning social hierarchy and centralized power in Japan. The mounds served primarily as burial sites for rulers, nobles, and influential families, with funerary chambers at their centers housing bodies, grave goods, and ceremonial objects. Excavations have revealed bronze mirrors, iron weapons, jewelry, and Hanawa clay figurines, each carefully placed, suggesting ritualized deposition and a codified approach to funerary practice. Yet, despite extensive study, much about the construction methods, labor organization, and underlying planning principles remains obscure. The construction of the Kofun mounds demonstrates an extraordinary understanding of scale, proportion, and spatial organization. Building a mound hundreds of meters long required careful planning, selecting appropriate soil, transporting massive quantities of earth, shaping terraces, and maintaining symmetry over uneven terrain. How did early Japanese engineers ensure consistent slopes, proportional dimensions, and stability across such massive structures? Were rudimentary surveying tools employed, or did knowledge rely on empirical observation, geometry passed through oral tradition, or mathematical ratios now lost to time? The very existence of keyhole shapes, repeated across regions with remarkable fidelity, suggests standardized planning principles and cultural codification of form. Astronomical alignment is another layer of intrigue. Some Kofun mounds appear oriented toward cardinal directions or to align with solstices, equinoxes, or notable celestial events. While the evidence is not uniform, these alignments imply an awareness of the sky integrated into monumental construction. Were the mounds designed purely for burial, or did their orientation serve a dual function, ritual and astronomical, embedding the movements of the heavens into the physical landscape? If so, how was this knowledge measured, translated into scale, and maintained across generations? The scale of labor required is equally compelling. Constructing a mound such as Daisen Kofun, with its central burial chamber and surrounding embankments, would have required thousands of workers over many years. Transporting soil and stones, shaping terraces, and creating moats demanded coordination, planning, and knowledge of civil engineering. What social systems enabled such mobilization? How were labor, resources, and expertise organized in a society that lacked written engineering manuals or standardized measurement systems? The logistical sophistication implied by these constructions suggests both centralized authority and a profound understanding of collective effort. Speculative interpretations deepen the mystery. Some researchers propose that the shapes of the mounds, particularly the recurring keyhole form, encode symbolic or cosmological significance. Does the circular rear mound represent heaven and the rectangular forecourt the earthly realm, merging spiritual and temporal spheres into a single geometric form? Could the repetition of proportions, the alignment of motes, and the precise layout of Haniwa figurines reflect sacred ratios or societal hierarchies codified into Earth itself? These are questions that cannot be definitively answered, yet the consistent replication of form across centuries implies more than aesthetic preference. It hints at knowledge encoded in shape, scale, and orientation. The Khofun mounds also invite reflection on memory and concealment. Many of the larger mounds remain unexcavated, their central burial chambers intact, guarding secrets of lineage, ritual, and technology. Even when excavations occur, the artifacts recovered, mirrors, weapons, and figurines, suggest highly codified rituals and social hierarchies, yet offer only partial insight into the full ceremonial or symbolic system. What cultural knowledge was encoded into the earth, the stones, and the figurines? How much remains hidden, either deliberately by cultural practice or simply because centuries have obscured records? Environmental factors further complicate understanding. Mounds were constructed over varied terrain, coastal plains, river terraces, and hilly landscapes. Builders had to account for soil stability, water drainage, and erosion, all without modern engineering tools. The fact that many mounds have survived largely intact for over a millennium indicates a sophisticated empirical knowledge of material properties, load distribution, and long-term structural integrity. Could this knowledge have been standardized and passed across regions, forming a shared architectural language among early Japanese elites? Walking along the contours of a Khofun mound today, one experiences a sense of presence and intention. The earth beneath each step has been deliberately placed, layered, and compacted, forming terraces that rise in precise, elegant proportion. The mounds command the landscape, asserting social power while maintaining harmony with natural surroundings. Yet, for all their visibility and physical dominance, they conceal more than they reveal. Their burial chambers remain largely inaccessible, their original rituals partially obscured by time, and their symbolic and mathematical intentions only partially interpreted. The Khofun mounds exemplify a recurring theme in prehistoric monumental architecture: the integration of mathematics, geometry, ritual, and social organization. They reveal that societies without modern tools or formalized notation systems could conceive of precise, large-scale designs and execute them with remarkable accuracy. And yet, even with centuries of scholarship, they retain a veil of mystery, challenging assumptions about prehistoric knowledge, social complexity, and the intersection of ritual, mathematics, and landscape. As sunlight casts long shadows across the terraces and moats of the Khofun, illuminating carefully shaped embankments and the silent remains of Haniwa figurines, one cannot help but reflect on the enduring presence of human intention. How did early Japanese societies conceptualize space, proportion, and geometry on such a grand scale? What principles of mathematics, astronomy, or social structure were encoded into earth and stone? And most intriguingly, what remains hidden, locked within unexcavated chambers or embedded in the geometry itself, waiting to be discovered by those patient enough to decode the intentions of a civilization that spoke through earth, labor, and design? The Khofun burial mounds endure as monuments not only to the individuals they commemorate, but to the sophisticated knowledge, planning, and artistry of prehistoric builders. They are a bridge across time, connecting us to minds capable of envisioning order and symmetry on a monumental scale. And as the wind whispers across their surfaces, one question remains: what secrets of measurement, ritual, and mathematical understanding lie still concealed, waiting beneath the soil of Japan's ancient mounds, poised to reveal the depth of human ingenuity long before written history could record it? From the islands of Japan, where the Khofun burial mounds rise with deliberate symmetry, integrating mathematics, ritual, and social hierarchy into monumental earthworks. Our exploration now moves northward, back across the Eurasian landmass to the rugged slopes and verdant valleys of the North Caucasus. Here, amidst mountains that have borne witness to millennia of human habitation, stand the dolmens of Russia, a remarkable collection of megalithic structures whose precision, scale, and enigmatic purpose continue to inspire awe and curiosity. These ancient stone monuments, hewn from massive slabs and arranged with striking geometric consistency, are silent witnesses to a prehistoric society whose knowledge seems both sophisticated and elusive. At first glance, the dolmens are striking for their austere simplicity and enduring strength. Each structure is built from enormous stone slabs, carefully fitted together to form a chamber, often capped with a single massive horizontal stone. Many are rectangular or trapezoidal, though circular variants exist, and their entrances are sometimes aligned with celestial phenomena, including the rising sun or lunar events. The stones themselves vary in size, yet even the largest, some weighing several tons, are balanced and positioned with remarkable precision, creating chambers that have survived earthquakes, landslides, and centuries of erosion. Viewed from above or across a valley, the arrangements reveal geometric patterns that suggest careful planning and knowledge of proportion, measurement, and load distribution. Scholars generally date the North Caucasus dolmens to the Bronze Age, roughly between 3000 and 1500 BCE, though some may be older. They are scattered across plains, hills, and river terraces, frequently found in clusters, and are often accompanied by small stone circles, burial pits, or carved stelae. Mainstream archaeology interprets them primarily as burial monuments, ceremonial centers, or territorial markers. Excavations have uncovered human remains, pottery fragments, metal objects, and other artifacts within the chambers, providing evidence of ritual use and complex funerary practice. Yet, despite extensive study, the techniques of construction, choice of location, and precise alignment remain puzzling. The dolmen's construction suggests a society with considerable technical skill. Quarrying enormous slabs of stone, transporting them across often rugged terrain, and assembling them into balanced chambers without mortar or modern lifting equipment would have required detailed planning, organized labor, and sophisticated understanding of geometry. How did these builders achieve such uniformity in alignment, proportion, and stability? Were simple levers, wooden rollers, and ropes sufficient, or does the precision hint at knowledge of mechanical principles lost to history? The dolmen's enduring stability, some still standing after more than 4,000 years, attests to an understanding of structural forces that continues to impress modern engineers. Alignment adds another layer of intrigue. Many dolmens have entrances oriented toward cardinal points or particular solar events, such as solstices, while others seem to align with nearby mountains or river courses. Could this reflect an integration of astronomy and landscape into ritual practice? Or were these alignments symbolic, mapping social, spiritual, or cosmological principles onto the physical world? If these patterns were deliberate, how were they measured and executed with such precision in an era without formal surveying instruments? The spatial consistency across distant dolmens suggests shared cultural knowledge and planning strategies that extended across generations and communities. Speculative theories have long surrounded these structures. Some suggest the dolmens were not only burial monuments, but also centers of astronomical observation or sacred geometry, encoding knowledge of the cosmos into stone. Others propose that they functioned as ceremonial or ritual pathways, guiding participants through symbolic or spiritual journeys. The geometric arrangements, coupled with astronomical orientation, have led some to draw parallels with megalithic sites elsewhere in Europe and the Near East. Could there have been shared principles of architectural or mathematical thought across vast prehistoric networks? Or are these similarities the result of convergent development, different societies independently discovering the same geometric solutions? The dolmen's internal architecture is equally thought-provoking. Chambers are typically rectangular, yet some contain niches, recesses, or carved stones, suggesting functional and symbolic sophistication. The balance of weight in corbelled or slab-covered chambers shows that these were not haphazard constructions. Each stone was carefully chosen, shaped, and positioned to achieve stability and longevity. Some entrances are deliberately narrow, while the interior space is proportioned in ways that imply an intuitive understanding of volume and spatial ratios. Was this knowledge derived empirically, passed orally through generations, or guided by symbolic rules that blended ritual with practical design? Environmental context further amplifies the mystery. Many dolmens are located on elevated terraces or rocky outcrops, often near water sources or along prominent ridgelines. The choice of location seems purposeful, balancing visibility, access, and perhaps symbolic significance. Transporting massive stones to such sites would have been a monumental task, yet the builders achieved it repeatedly, across clusters of dolmens and through centuries. What social organization allowed for this level of coordination? How did early communities mobilize labor, knowledge, and resources for constructions that were as enduring as they were monumental? Even the carved decorations on some dolmens, often simple but deliberate grooves, cup marks, or patterns, invite reflection. Were these purely decorative, or did they carry symbolic meaning, encode ritual instructions, or represent mathematical or astronomical observations? Could these markings be a visual language, now largely lost, meant to communicate information to initiates or future generations? In their simplicity lies a complexity that modern observers can appreciate but cannot fully decipher. Walking among the dolmens today, the sense of human presence is palpable. Each stone, weathered but resilient, bears silent witness to the labor, intention, and knowledge of its builders. Pathways between dolmens, alignments with natural features, and the sheer scale of the chambers convey a combination of practicality, artistry, and ritual awareness. One can imagine ceremonies unfolding, participants moving through stone corridors, offerings placed in niches, chants echoing off monolithic walls, all guided by principles of proportion, orientation, and spatial harmony. And yet, despite the apparent clarity of purpose, the full meaning remains beyond reach. The North Caucasus dolmens exemplify a recurring theme in prehistoric architecture, the union of geometry, engineering, ritual, and social cohesion. They demonstrate that early societies, even in remote regions, could conceive and execute monumental designs with remarkable accuracy. And yet, they remain enigmatic, a puzzle where the sophistication of design hints at knowledge that transcends survival or aesthetics, suggesting an awareness of proportion, orientation, and spatial order that continues to challenge modern interpretation. As the wind sweeps through the valleys, rustling grass over ancient stone slabs and casting shifting shadows across the dolmens' faces, one is struck by the silent testimony of human ingenuity. How were these massive stones selected, transported, and placed with such precision? What social and cultural structures enabled generations of laborers to execute complex designs? And most provocatively, what additional knowledge, astronomical, mathematical, or symbolic, was encoded within these constructions, now obscured by time and loss? The dolmens of the North Caucasus endure as monuments to human intellect, communal effort, and geometric insight. They are both functional and symbolic, balancing the physical needs of burial with the intangible demands of ritual, social cohesion, and perhaps cosmic alignment. And as sunlight illuminates their carefully positioned stones, casting long, precise shadows across the terrain. One is left with a question that echoes across millennia. What secrets, still buried within these chambers, or inscribed in the arrangement of stones, remain hidden, awaiting those patient and perceptive enough to uncover the full measure of prehistoric knowledge encoded in the mountains of the Caucasus? These dolmens, scattered across the slopes and valleys, call on us to reconsider the capabilities of ancient societies. They challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric engineering, mathematics, and social organization. And while we can measure distances, map alignments, and study material composition, the intentions, rituals, and conceptual frameworks behind these structures remain tantalizingly out of reach. They are at once a testament to human innovation and a reminder that even the most monumental achievements of the past can retain their mysteries, inviting generations of observers to wonder, hypothesize, and explore the depths of knowledge our ancestors quietly embedded in stone. From the rugged mountains and verdant valleys of the North Caucasus, where dolmens rise as silent monuments to prehistoric engineering and geometric precision, our journey now turns southward toward the arid plains of southeastern Iran. Here lies one of the most enigmatic and least understood monumental constructions of the ancient world, the Ziggurat of Jiroft. Hidden for millennia beneath layers of alluvial soil and desert sands, this step pyramid complex speaks to a civilization that thrived along the Halil River, leaving behind artifacts and architecture that hint at remarkable mathematical sophistication and ceremonial purpose, but whose full significance remains tantalizingly out of reach. The ziggurat itself emerges from the landscape with quiet authority. Constructed from baked bricks and mud, its stepped terraces rise in diminishing tiers, forming a platform that would have once dominated the surrounding floodplain. Though much of the original structure has eroded, the surviving remains suggest a base of imposing proportions, measuring hundreds of meters across, with carefully aligned steps leading to what may have been a summit shrine or ceremonial hall. The geometry is immediately apparent: terraces of consistent height, walls set at precise angles, and an orientation that seems deliberately aligned with cardinal directions. Viewed from above, or imagined through careful reconstruction, the ziggurat conveys an extraordinary understanding of spatial planning and proportional design. Archaeologists date the Jiroft complex to the early Bronze Age, around 2500 to 2200 BCE, a period roughly contemporary with the flourishing cities of Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. The region itself, long overlooked, has yielded a trove of artifacts: elaborately carved chlorite vessels, bronze objects, and cylinder seals that attest to a sophisticated culture with advanced artistic, technological, and possibly administrative capabilities. Yet the ziggurat, as a centerpiece of urban planning, raises questions that extend beyond art or craftsmanship. Its very existence implies an understanding of scale, geometry, and structural engineering that is difficult to reconcile with our assumptions about early civilizations in this region. The design of the ziggurat suggests deliberate alignment and proportionality. The steps, terraces, and retaining walls appear to follow a consistent unit of measurement, hinting at standardized building practices. How were these measurements established and maintained over the course of construction? Did the builders employ an early system of surveying or mathematical ratios, transmitted orally or through ritual practice? And if so, how widespread was this knowledge within the society? Was it the province of specialized architects and priests, or part of a broader cultural understanding embedded in communal labor and tradition? Equally compelling is the placement of the structure within its landscape. The ziggurat occupies a prominent position near the Halil River, overlooking what would have been fertile agricultural plains. Its terraces may have functioned not only as a ceremonial platform, but also as a visual anchor for the surrounding settlement, communicating authority and cosmological significance across miles of territory. Some researchers suggest that the orientation of the terraces may correspond to celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or lunar standstills, implying an integration of astronomy into architectural planning. If true, this adds a layer of complexity, a structure designed not merely for ritual or administration, but as a physical expression of cosmic order. The materials themselves speak to both ingenuity and intent. Baked bricks, produced in kilns on-site or nearby, were carefully shaped and positioned to withstand both the weight of successive terraces and the erosive forces of wind and occasional floodwaters. Mud mortar or packed earth would have stabilized the structure, while careful drainage channels may have prevented water accumulation. The durability of the remains suggests empirical knowledge of load distribution, material properties, and long-term maintenance, knowledge that may have been passed down through generations of builders but is now largely lost. Excavations of the site have revealed smaller architectural features surrounding the ziggurat: platforms, subsidiary walls, and what appear to be ritual courtyards. These elements imply that the structure was not isolated, but part of a complex urban or ceremonial plan. Could the ziggurat have served as both a religious and administrative center, integrating ritual, governance, and social cohesion into a single architectural statement? How did the builders coordinate labor, resources, and planning across what must have been a large, organized workforce? The answers remain elusive, obscured by time and sediment, yet the scale of ambition is undeniable. Speculative interpretations further deepen the intrigue. Some scholars have suggested that the Jiroft ziggurat may encode symbolic or cosmological knowledge, its proportions reflecting concepts of sacred geometry or numerical significance. Could the terraces correspond to lunar or solar cycles, agricultural seasons, or cosmological myths encoded into the architecture itself? Others propose that the structure functioned as a focal point for pilgrimage, ritual observation, or even proto-administrative record-keeping, with the terraces serving as stages for ceremonial processions or social hierarchies. These interpretations cannot be confirmed, yet they invite reflection on the intellectual and cultural capacities of early Bronze Age societies in the region. The discovery and study of Jiroft has been complicated by both geography and modern history. Excavations began only in the early 2000s, after looters and illegal trade brought local artifacts to global attention. The site's remote location, combined with the fragility of mud brick construction, has limited systematic archaeological exploration, leaving much of the ziggurat buried and only partially understood. How many terraces, chambers, or associated structures remain hidden beneath layers of alluvium? What objects, inscriptions, or symbolic elements lie undiscovered, their significance waiting to be interpreted? Walking through the site today, one experiences a striking sense of presence and intention. Even in its ruined state, the geometry of terraces, the alignment of walls, and the scale of the platform communicate purpose and mastery. The ziggurat seems to reach upward not only toward the sky, but toward ideas, cosmic order, social hierarchy, and the relationship between humans and the universe. And yet, despite its clear planning, its full meaning remains elusive. Was it built to honor deities, kings, or both? Did the builders intend it to function as a calendar, an observatory, or a ceremonial stage? Or were these purposes intertwined in ways that we can only speculate about today? The Jiroft ziggurat exemplifies a recurring pattern in prehistoric monumental architecture: the integration of mathematics, geometry, and social organization into enduring forms. Across continents, from the Kofun mounds of Japan to the dolmens of the North Caucasus, societies appear to have encoded knowledge of proportion, orientation, and spatial planning into their constructions, suggesting a deep appreciation for symmetry, measurement, and cosmic correspondence. Yet, in each case, the full reasoning behind the design, the methods employed, and the knowledge transmitted remains partially hidden, leaving us to infer from stone, brick, and soil. As the sun dips toward the horizon over the Halil River, casting long shadows across terraces and mud brick walls, one is struck by the enduring presence of human ambition and intellect. How did the builders of Jiroft conceptualize space, proportion, and celestial alignment in a time long before formalized mathematics or engineering manuals? What social structures enabled the construction of such monumental architecture, and how was knowledge transmitted from one generation to the next? And most provocatively, what secrets remain buried within the terraces, chambers, and surrounding settlement, awaiting discovery to illuminate the full sophistication of a civilization now almost lost to time? The Ziggurat of Jiroft stands today as both a testament and a puzzle, a carefully calculated monument whose precision, scale, and integration with its environment speak of remarkable human ingenuity, yet whose origins, purpose, and full complexity remain tantalizingly obscure. It invites us to consider the depth of prehistoric knowledge, the universality of mathematical principles across early civilizations, and the mysteries that survive in stone, brick, and soil. As shadows lengthen over its terraces and the wind whispers across the Halil plain, one question endures. How much of human ingenuity, encoded into these ancient constructions, lies still hidden, waiting for those willing to explore the interplay of mathematics, ritual, and monumental architecture in the dawn of civilization? From the arid plains of southeastern Iran, where the Ziggurat of Jiroft rises as a testament to Bronze Age ingenuity and geometric sophistication, our journey now turns westward across continents and oceans, to the warm turquoise waters of the Atlantic. Beneath the shallow seas off the coast of Bimini, in the Bahamas, lies an underwater formation that has captivated explorers, archaeologists, and curious minds for decades: the Bimini Road. Stretching along the ocean floor in a seemingly deliberate pattern, this submerged alignment of massive limestone blocks has sparked fascination, debate, and speculation, as it challenges conventional understandings of prehistoric human capability and invites us to reconsider what might lie hidden beneath the waves. At first glance, the Bimini Road appears almost natural, a random scattering of stone fragments settled by the currents. Yet closer inspection reveals startling characteristics. Enormous blocks, some weighing several tons, laid in a linear, almost rectangular arrangement. The edges of many stones are unusually straight, the surfaces flat and even, and the gaps between them consistent enough to suggest intentional placement. Stretching for nearly 0.8 kilometers along the northern edge of Bimini Island, the formation curves gently, following the contours of the seabed. Its orientation is peculiar, aligned with the island's shore and parallel to nearby natural features, hinting at planning that goes beyond chance. The formation was first brought to wider attention in the 1960s, when divers exploring the shallow waters reported what appeared to be large, interconnected blocks forming a road or platform. Early surveys and photographic documentation revealed the startling scale and geometric consistency of the stones. Some blocks display sharp edges and right angles, leading researchers and enthusiasts to suggest that this is not a purely natural phenomenon, but rather the remnants of a constructed feature, possibly a road, pier, or platform from a culture now lost to time. The structure's construction, submerged beneath a few meters of seawater, raises immediate questions. If this is man-made, when was it built, and by whom? Mainstream geological analysis offers plausible explanations. The Bimini Road rests atop a limestone shelf that is part of the Pleistocene terrace system. Fracturing, erosion, and wave action can produce large, angular blocks resembling masonry. Some geologists argue that the linear arrangement is coincidental, a product of natural jointing and faulting in the limestone bedrock. Yet the consistency of spacing, the alignment with the shoreline, and the apparent step-like formation of certain sections complicate this interpretation. How likely is it that natural forces alone could produce such regularity over hundreds of meters, with blocks fitting together in a pattern that evokes deliberate human planning? Further intrigue emerges when considering the age of the formation. The limestone of the Bimini Shelf formed over 15,000 years ago, during periods when sea levels were lower and much of the area was dry land. If the Bimini Road was constructed during this time, it would predate known civilizations in the region by millennia. Could this be evidence of a lost culture? A society capable of precise construction and geometric planning long before the emergence of historically documented civilizations in the Americas or the Caribbean? Or does it reflect an earlier phase of human exploration, now largely erased by rising seas and shifting coastlines? The geometric characteristics of the Bimini Road fuel further speculation. Certain sections of the formation display right angles, rectangular outlines, and flat terraces that suggest the use of tools or planning in stone shaping and placement. Some divers have noted that the blocks could form a continuous walkway or platform, possibly connecting natural features or serving a functional purpose, such as docking, ritual activity, or ceremonial procession. Could these terraces have acted as a kind of spatial framework encoding measurements, proportions, or orientations into the landscape? If so, what knowledge guided their creation and what was their intended function? Archaeological investigation is limited, in part because of the underwater context. Shifting sands, tides, and coral growth obscure portions of the formation, making systematic excavation difficult. Small artifacts have occasionally been found nearby, including stone tools and pottery shards, though none definitively date the structure. This raises the tantalizing possibility that remnants of a lost civilization, once thriving on now submerged land, could lie buried just beneath the ocean floor. Could the Bimini Road be the tip of a far larger network of prehistoric architecture, waiting for discovery beneath sediment and coral, a submerged record of human ingenuity erased by rising seas? The Bimini Road also resonates with broader themes in prehistoric architecture. From the dolmens of the North Caucasus to the Ziggurats of Jiroft, and from the Kofun Mounds of Japan to the Bimini Formation beneath the Atlantic waves, humans across the globe demonstrate an impulse to organize space with precision, embed mathematical reasoning into construction, and integrate geometry with cultural or ritual meaning. The Bimini Road, submerged yet strikingly linear, offers a unique perspective. It challenges us to consider not only terrestrial ingenuity, but also the persistence of human ambition and knowledge in environments that time and nature have partially hidden. Diving along the limestone blocks, one senses the presence of human intention, or at least the suggestion of it. The flat surfaces, linear orientation, and subtle terraces suggest order. Even if the formation is partially natural, the fact that humans recognized and possibly modified these shapes underscores the enduring human attraction to geometry and alignment. Could prehistoric peoples have selected and enhanced natural blocks, creating a hybrid of human planning and geological happenstance? Or does the formation represent a purely natural template upon which we project the familiar patterns of human design? As light filters through the shallow Atlantic, illuminating the surface of the blocks and casting shadows that emphasize their scale and linearity, the Bimini Road inspires both awe and wonder. How much of its story lies in the blocks themselves, and how much in what is now hidden beneath sand, coral, or water? What was its original function, if any, and who were its builders, if it was indeed created by human hands? Could it reveal knowledge of mathematics, proportion, or astronomy, encoded in stone for future generations to interpret? Or is it a reminder of the extraordinary ability of natural forces to mimic human intention? The Bimini Road invites us to consider the broader implications of submerged and prehistoric architecture. If it was built by humans, it demonstrates an ability to manipulate massive stones, coordinate labor, and create precise alignments long before civilizations with written records arose. If it is natural, it challenges our perception of coincidence and highlights how geological processes can produce forms that echo the precision of human design. Either way, it leaves a powerful impression that the ocean, like time itself, can preserve, conceal, and transform traces of the past, waiting for those willing to dive, study, and wonder. Floating above the formation today, one cannot help but feel a connection across millennia. The Bimini Road is a threshold between the visible and the hidden, between the measurable and the mysterious, a structure that simultaneously invites rigorous study and imaginative speculation. It reminds us that the past is not always orderly or fully understood, yet that traces of human thought, creativity, and ingenuity can persist in stone long after cultures have vanished. As the current sweeps over the limestone blocks, eroding edges and carrying away sand, one question remains. What secrets lie beneath the surface, in the spaces between the stones or the layers of sediment above them? Was this a creation of human hands, an imprint of lost knowledge, or a marvel of natural forces that coincidentally echoes human geometry? And more broadly, how many other formations, hidden by water or time, await discovery, capable of challenging our understanding of prehistoric skill, mathematical insight, and the ingenuity of civilizations long vanished beneath the waves? The Bimini Road, in its quiet linearity beneath turquoise waters, continues to inspire reflection on the intersection of human ambition, mathematics, and the natural world. It extends the narrative of prehistoric monumental construction, an Atlantic echo of the ziggurats, coffin mounds, and dolmens we have explored, revealing that across continents and environments, humans and perhaps even natural forces have created forms of striking order and precision. And as sunlight refracts through the sea and dances across flat limestone surfaces, one is left with the enduring mystery. What lies still hidden beneath the waves, and what can these submerged structures tell us about the ingenuity, intention, and mathematical understanding of the distant past? Floating above the formation today, the mind cannot help but wander. What lies beneath the shifting sands and coral that obscure sections of the structure? How much of human history has been submerged, lost, or simply transformed by the sea? And perhaps most profoundly, what can we learn about the capacities of prehistoric peoples, their understanding of geometry, proportion, and environmental adaptation, from a formation that exists quietly on the ocean floor, half revealed and half hidden? The Bimini Road endures as a testament to mystery, precision, and the persistence of human curiosity. Its stones are a dialogue across millennia, inviting observers to ask questions, measure patterns, and imagine possibilities. Whether a product of human construction, natural geological processes, or a combination of both, the formation reminds us that the past often retains secrets that challenge contemporary understanding. And as the Atlantic waves sweep over the limestone blocks, one cannot help but wonder, what other traces of prehistoric ingenuity, knowledge, and design lie waiting beneath the seas, concealed, yet waiting to illuminate the full scope of human mathematical and architectural achievement? In this way, the Bimini Road extends the narrative of human interaction with geometry, proportion, and monumental construction, a narrative that stretches from the ziggurats of ancient Iran, through the Kofun mounds of Japan, and across the dolmens of the Caucasus, all the way to submerged formations beneath tropical waters. Each site, while distinct in environment and culture, echoes a shared human impulse to measure, to organize, to leave a mark of deliberate design, and to connect the physical world with cultural, spiritual, and possibly cosmic meaning. And the Bimini Road, half hidden beneath turquoise waves, remains one of the most compelling and enigmatic expressions of that impulse, inviting us to look deeper, think broader, and wonder endlessly about the reach of prehistoric intelligence. From the Ziggurats of Jiroft, where mud brick terraces rise in precise geometric form, suggesting a prehistoric mastery of measurement and proportional planning, our journey now drifts across continents and oceans to the shimmering waters of the Atlantic, near the Bahamian island of Bimini. Beneath the shallow, turquoise waves lies a formation that has puzzled explorers, scientists, and enthusiasts for decades: the Bimini Road. At first glance, it might appear as a simple cluster of limestone blocks scattered by currents, but closer inspection reveals a structure of startling alignment and scale, inviting questions that touch on geology, archaeology, and the limits of human history. The Bimini Road stretches along the northern coast of the island, following the contours of the seabed in a line that is almost unnervingly straight, punctuated by sharp right angles and long, flat surfaces. The blocks themselves vary in size, some several meters across and many weighing multiple tons. Yet despite their mass, the stones seem to fit together in a coherent pattern, forming a linear pathway or platform that extends for nearly a kilometer beneath the water. Their surfaces are unusually flat, their edges sharp, and the spacing between them remarkably consistent, giving the impression of intentional placement rather than random natural formation. Even now, divers moving along the formation cannot help but feel a sense of deliberate design, as if walking through the remnants of a structure created by a conscious mind, not the slow forces of waves and time. Discovered and documented in the 1960s, the Bimini Road captured immediate attention. Early photographs and reports showed not only linear alignment, but apparent terraces and step-like formations in certain sections. Could this have been a roadway, a ceremonial platform, or a dock extending into shallow coastal waters? Archaeologists have noted the possibility that the blocks were arranged to connect natural limestone outcroppings, forming a deliberate sequence of paths or platforms. If so, the builders would have possessed not only remarkable engineering skill, but also knowledge of proportion and alignment, essentially a form of prehistoric geometry realized in stone. Yet the mainstream geological perspective offers an alternative: that the Bimini Road is the product of natural processes. The formation sits atop a Pleistocene limestone terrace, which over tens of thousands of years fractured and eroded under the influence of tectonic movements, wave action, and sedimentation. Certain joints in the limestone tend to break into rectangular blocks, creating an appearance of man-made alignment. Could such processes, acting over millennia, produce the straight lines and apparent steps that divers have documented? The evidence is ambiguous. Some formations look perfectly natural, while others, with flat surfaces and consistent spacing, resist purely geological explanation. The boundary between human construction and natural occurrence seems remarkably blurred here. Adding to the mystery is the question of age. During the late Pleistocene, sea levels were much lower, and the Bimini Formation would have been exposed above water, potentially accessible to humans. If the arrangement is indeed man-made, it could predate the rise of known civilizations in the Americas by thousands of years. Could a lost population, long forgotten by history, have possessed the knowledge and skill to manipulate massive stone blocks, organize large-scale construction, and create geometrically precise structures? Or is it more likely that natural forces created the framework, later interpreted by human observers as intentional? The implications of either scenario are profound. The Bimini Road's orientation hints at possible purpose. The line of blocks runs roughly parallel to the shoreline and appears to curve gently in harmony with the island's natural contours. Some researchers have suggested that sections may align with solar events, such as the solstices, or with other natural features in the surrounding seascape. Could the builders have been embedding astronomical knowledge into the structure? Was the pathway intended as a ritual or ceremonial space, with precise geometric ratios reflecting a cosmological worldview? If so, it would join a remarkable lineage of prehistoric structures worldwide, from the Ziggurats of Jiroft to the Chavin mounds of Japan, where mathematics, orientation, and architecture converge to encode both power and knowledge. The physicality of the Bimini Road is as arresting as its potential purpose. Divers report that the blocks have a subtle curvature and alignment that suggest intentional arrangement. Certain segments appear to step down gradually, forming terraces, while others form linear platforms with right-angled corners that are difficult to explain as purely natural occurrences. Transporting and positioning such massive stones would have required coordinated effort, tools, and knowledge of leverage and stability. How could such tasks have been achieved in prehistoric times, possibly long before metallurgy, wheels, or even permanent settlements in the region? And if they were constructed, what motivated this monumental effort? Ritual, utility, or something we cannot yet comprehend? Speculative theories abound. Some propose that the Bimini Road is a remnant of the legendary Atlantis described by Plato, a civilization advanced enough to build monumental structures and manipulate landscapes in ways that echo across continents and millennia. Others suggest it could have been a platform for water-based ceremonies, a pier, or a path connecting sacred sites along the ancient coastline. Skeptics, however, argue for a purely natural explanation: limestone fractures and tidal forces creating an accidental alignment that humans later interpret as design. Each perspective underscores the tension between observation, interpretation, and imagination, inviting us to consider how the past leaves traces that challenge our assumptions. Environmental context provides further insight into the formation. The Bimini region is dynamic, shaped by hurricanes, ocean currents, and rising seas. If man-made, the structure would have been constructed on land or in extremely shallow water, only later submerged by post-Pleistocene sea level rise. This implies not only engineering skill, but also environmental adaptation, as the builders would have needed to anticipate or endure significant changes in water levels. Could prehistoric societies have had knowledge of these shifting landscapes, building with both immediate function and long-term survival in mind? Or was submergence an unforeseen consequence, leaving their creation largely hidden beneath waves for millennia? The mysteries of the Bimini Road extend beyond construction and purpose to the very question of evidence. Unlike terrestrial monuments, the site is partially obscured by sediment, marine growth, and water movement. Artifacts are scarce, limiting the ability to date the formation or link it definitively to a human culture. And yet, this scarcity is itself intriguing. Could objects, inscriptions, or tools lie buried beneath sand and coral, waiting to reveal the story of the people who might have built this enigmatic pathway? Could the formation itself encode knowledge, in scale, proportion, or alignment, preserved in stone long after other records have vanished? The Bimini Road also resonates with broader themes in prehistoric architecture. From the dolmens of the North Caucasus to the Ziggurats of Jiroft, and from the Kofun mounds of Japan to the Bimini Formation beneath the Atlantic waves, humans across the globe demonstrate an impulse to organize space with precision, embed mathematical reasoning into construction, and integrate geometry with cultural or ritual meaning. The Bimini Road, submerged yet strikingly linear, offers a unique perspective. It challenges us to consider not only terrestrial ingenuity, but also the persistence of human ambition and knowledge in environments that time and nature have partially hidden. Diving along the limestone blocks, one senses the presence of human intention, or at least the suggestion of it. The flat surfaces, linear orientation, and subtle terraces suggest order. Even if the formation is partially natural, the fact that humans recognized and possibly modified these shapes underscores the enduring human attraction to geometry and alignment. Could prehistoric peoples have selected and enhanced natural blocks, creating a hybrid of human planning and geological happenstance? Or does the formation represent a purely natural template upon which we project the familiar patterns of human design? As light filters through the shallow Atlantic, illuminating the surface of the blocks and casting shadows that emphasize their scale and linearity, the Bimini Road inspires both awe and wonder. How much of its story lies in the blocks themselves, and how much in what is now hidden beneath sand, coral, or water? What was its original function, if any, and who were its builders, if it was indeed created by human hands? Could it reveal knowledge of mathematics, proportion, or astronomy, encoded in stone for future generations to interpret? Or is it a reminder of the extraordinary ability of natural forces to mimic human intention? The Bimini Road invites us to consider the broader implications of submerged and prehistoric architecture. If it was built by humans, it demonstrates an ability to manipulate massive stones, coordinate labor, and create precise alignments long before civilizations with written records arose. If it is natural, it challenges our perception of coincidence and highlights how geological processes can produce forms that echo the precision of human design. Either way, it leaves a powerful impression that the ocean, like time itself, can preserve, conceal, and transform traces of the past, waiting for those willing to dive, study, and wonder. Floating above the formation today, one cannot help but feel a connection across millennia. The Bimini Road is a threshold between the visible and the hidden, between the measurable and the mysterious, a structure that simultaneously invites rigorous study and imaginative speculation. It reminds us that the past is not always orderly or fully understood, yet that traces of human thought, creativity, and ingenuity can persist in stone long after cultures have vanished. As the current sweeps over the limestone blocks, eroding edges and carrying away sand, one question remains. What secrets lie beneath the surface, in the spaces between the stones or the layers of sediment above them? Was this a creation of human hands, an imprint of lost knowledge, or a marvel of natural forces that coincidentally echoes human geometry? And more broadly, how many other formations, hidden by water or time, await discovery, capable of challenging our understanding of prehistoric skill, mathematical insight, and the ingenuity of civilizations long vanished beneath the waves? The Bimini Road, in its quiet linearity beneath turquoise waters, continues to inspire reflection on the intersection of human ambition, mathematics, and the natural world. It extends the narrative of prehistoric monumental construction, an Atlantic echo of the ziggurats, coffin mounds, and dolmens we have explored, revealing that across continents and environments, humans and perhaps even natural forces have created forms of striking order and precision. And as sunlight refracts through the sea and dances across flat limestone surfaces, one is left with the enduring mystery. What lies still hidden beneath the waves, and what can these submerged structures tell us about the ingenuity, intention, and mathematical understanding of the distant past? The Bimini Road is more than stone beneath water. It is a bridge across time, a dialogue between earth, sea, and human curiosity. Whether man-made, natural, or a combination of both, it reminds us that precision, proportion, and geometry have long been intertwined with human imagination, and that even beneath the shifting waves, the past retains secrets waiting to be deciphered. And as divers trace the formation, moving carefully along terraces that have endured millennia, the question lingers. What else has the ocean concealed? And what truths about prehistoric knowledge, mathematics, and construction remain submerged, waiting for discovery?